The Bible, the most powerful book of all time, read every day by billions of people around the world. Whether you are religious or not, you have surely heard at least once of great epic stories, such as Noah's Ark, the Battle of David, or the life of Jesus. However, with a massive system made up of 66 different books, not everyone clearly understands the full picture and the connecting thread running throughout this entire collection. Welcome to all 66 books of the Bible explained in one video, God's Complete Masterplan. In this video, we will take an epic journey together to explore the complete story of the Bible, going deep into the content of each individual book. Beginning with the event of origins, when all things were formed in the book of Genesis, and continuing to the moment when humanity fell by eating the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden, you will see that most of the Bible is in essence the story of God's great plan to heal and restore the broken relationship with humanity. This journey will take us through two main parts. First is the Old Testament, where we witness the rising and falling history of God's chosen people, Israel, from their escape from slavery in Egypt to the establishment of sacred laws, and then to the warnings of the prophets about the collapse of kingdoms and the hope of a Messiah. Second is the New Testament, where the story reaches its peak through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, the powerful spread of the early church through the Epistles, and finally closes with the earth-shaking vision of the end of days and the restoration of all things in the book of Revelation. More than just a simple book, the Bible is truly a great library, a grand plan of the Creator, encoded and tightly woven together from the first lines of Genesis all the way to the final period of Revelation. Whether you are a believer who has turned the pages of the Bible for decades, or simply someone longing to seek the truth about the origin of humanity and has never stepped inside a church, this video will completely change the way you see the world. It will help you answer the most mysterious question of life: who are we, and what is our place in this universe? Now fully relax your mind. Set aside every prejudice and let this narration lead you into the journey of decoding the greatest blueprint of all time. The Bible, the most powerful book of all time. You have certainly heard of the Bible before, whether you are religious or not. Today, among more than 8 billion people around the world, it is estimated that more than half of the global population is spiritually connected to the major religions. More than 2.4 billion Christians regard this book as the living word. Tens of millions of Jews strictly preserve the Old Testament as the eternal covenant of their people. Even nearly 2 billion Muslims also share reverence for the great prophets recorded within it. But the most miraculous and powerful thing is this: whether a person follows any religion or is simply an atheistic historian searching for the past, they still have to open the Bible in order to trace the buried truths of humanity. Across thousands of years, the Bible has remained standing as the most mysterious and powerful book, and this truth will surely endure forever. Are you wondering why an ancient collection of writings has such power? The truths and historical data that follow will give you the clearest answer. The Bible holds every record that any work in the world would desire. First, it is the best-selling work of all time. Since 1815, people once estimated that more than 5 billion complete Bibles, or major portions of the Bible, had been distributed. But according to the most updated records from Guinness World Records, the real number today has surpassed 7 billion copies. Its reach does not stop with printing numbers. It extends into every corner of civilization. The Hebrew Bible, as well as the Christian Bible, has been translated into more languages than any other book. The latest data from the United Bible Societies shows that the whole Bible, or parts of it, have been translated into more than 3,500 languages, directly reaching more than 90% of the world's population. With that enormous distribution, if we count an average of only 2 readers per copy, then more than 6 billion people on this planet have read the Bible at some point. Time passes, dynasties collapse, and doctrines change. Yet the Bible remains the most relevant book. Although it has existed for more than 2,000 years, the words written inside it have not become old. These principles remain core truths continually applied to solve real problems in the daily life of modern human beings. The reason it has overcome every test of time is that this is a book of absolute power. Every other book on earth is limited by human wisdom. But the words of the Bible are filled with power because they are the word of a living, sovereign, and glorious God for all ages. It is also the greatest book about God. If you have ever gone on a retreat or listened to the deepest sermon about the Creator from a famous scholar, then everything you heard came from this book. Every sermon about God that does not take the Bible as its foundation is a misleading guidance. Even more strangely, the deeper you go into its pages, the more you will discover that the words in the Bible are writing about you and for you. Whether you are sinking in suffering, sorrow, and sin, or standing on the heights of joy and peace, all those conditions are truthfully reflected in Scripture. There you will always find the right path for yourself. That is why the Bible has become the most important and valuable book for human life. Jesus clearly said, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." In other words, if you only eat to sustain the body, but lack faith in the Word of God, you are allowing your soul to slowly wither and die. As the Gospel of Matthew chapter 16 verse 26 records, "For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul?" This book was written for everyone. The wealthy and the poor, the educated and the uneducated can all approach it. And yet, it is also the most expensive book that has ever existed. This precious cost does not lie in earthly material value. It was paid for by the blood and death of Jesus on the cross. Because of that sacrifice, it becomes the book that speaks most certainly about the past and the future. No astrologer or fortune teller can predict as accurately as the Bible, because even their own destiny lies fully within the arrangement of this book. But stepping back from those great records, what is the Bible really, and how was it formed? The Bible is a collection of sacred writings concerning the faith of Judaism and Christianity. It was written by about 40 authors living across 3 different continents over a long period of nearly 1,600 years. The original manuscripts were written in 3 languages, mainly Hebrew and Greek. A few special passages were written in Aramaic, the common language in Judea, during the time of Jesus. Although dozens of people held the pen, they did not compose it by themselves. The authors of the Bible were inspired by God. They served only as recorders, writing down exactly what He guided them to write. The name of this book also carries a deep history. The Vietnamese term Kinh Thánh is translated from the English phrase Holy Bible. The word Bible comes from the Latin word Biblia or Vivlia in Greek, which was originally a plural neuter noun meaning books. In terms of structure, the Bible is divided into 2 main parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament serves as the core scripture of Judaism, recording the origin of the universe and humanity. The New Testament continues by recording the entire life of Jesus, His teachings, the formation of the church, and the core instructions of the early church leaders. So in summary, what does this enormous book contain? The Bible is the direct revelation of God to humanity. It thoroughly answers the greatest questions: who is God? Where did human beings come from? And what is God's great program for humanity? It also tells us who Jesus is and how a sinful human being can be restored into a good relationship with the Creator through Him as mediator. The purpose for which God gave the Bible to humanity is not so that we would study theory, but so that we would apply it. The Bible helps each individual recognize his place in the immense design of the universe and how to live according to the purpose for which He created him. The Bible encourages you to practice the principles it teaches in order to truly experience the blessings God has promised. From a practical angle, applying the Bible to life is completely like using a computer machine or a highly advanced technological device. You may not see through every circuit board inside. You may not fully understand the hidden way it works, but as long as you understand and correctly practice the basic functions that are instructed, you will surely receive a perfect result. And in order to fully grasp that great chain of instruction, we must return to the beginning point of the timeline, where the design of the universe was laid on its first foundations. Our journey of decoding tonight will officially enter the Old Testament, the greatest body of inheritance in the Bible. This is the solemn chronicle recording the original covenant between God and humanity, opening an age that witnessed supreme powers and judgments that shook the entire earth. The book of Genesis, the creation of all things, and the Garden of Eden. The book of Genesis is the first gateway opening into the entire world of the Bible. The name Genesis in its original language carries a direct meaning origin. This book is not simply a record, but the ultimate explanation of the origin of all things, and the first chronicle tracing the earliest history of the Jewish people. This entire great journey unfolds through tightly connected movements of content. The journey of Genesis begins with the most sacred moment in the universe, when God established order for all creation. Before time began its first heartbeat, the universe was only an undefined void, dark and submerged in the waters of chaos. But that emptiness did not last. As recorded in detail in the first two chapters, chapter 1 and chapter 2, God began His great design with a solemn order that lasted 6 days. On the first day He spoke, and mighty light instantly tore through the curtain of eternal darkness. He separated the brilliant light from the night, establishing the first boundary of space and time, and named them day and night. This powerful intervention continued on the second day. When He created a vast expanse, this great dome completely separated the immense waters below from the waters above, forming the atmosphere that wrapped around the planet and creating a safe space where life was about to take shape. Once the sky had been established, the third day witnessed a violent transformation of the Earth's surface. At His command, the enormous waters withdrew and gathered together to form deep oceans, giving way for continents and dry land to rise. Immediately, the barren, rocky surface was covered with a diverse blanket of vegetation, from delicate blades of grass to ancient trees bearing seed, establishing a firm ecological foundation for the world. But a living planet needed the rhythm of the universe. On the fourth day, God fixed the stars in the sky. He placed the radiant sun to govern the day and the quiet moon to guide the night. These vast bodies did not merely bring light. They also served as perfectly precise gears to operate the seasons, the years, and the endless cycles of time for humanity. That magnificent scene officially received the breath of life on the fifth day. He commanded the waters below to bring forth countless great sea creatures and schools of fish moving in the depths. At the same time, He called forth multitudes of birds to spread their wings across the sky. The once barren picture was now filled with sound and movement. Then the sixth day arrived, carrying the summit of the entire work of creation. God called forth wild animals, livestock, and creatures of the land from the earth. Every ecosystem had been completed, ready to welcome the final masterpiece. With his own hands, he shaped a form from the dust of the ground. But this being was completely different from every creature before it. This being was created in his very image. When God breathed his breath of life into its veins, the first man opened his eyes. In that moment, Adam officially carried within himself a sacred soul and received the authority to govern and protect the entire great work upon the earth. On the seventh day, he rested, sealing the completion of a world in absolute harmony and peace. This perfection was completely different from the conflict-filled myths and wars of the ancient Mesopotamian civilization surrounding that era, especially the Babylonian epic Enuma Elish. Instead of being filled with wars among gods, the Bible affirms the absolute power of one creator, painting a world of harmony from the very beginning. To establish the lineage of humanity, God formed the first man from the dust of the ground, gave him the name Adam, meaning ground, and directly breathed the breath of life into his veins. When Adam fell into a deep sleep, God then took one of his ribs and created Eve, the woman whose name carries the meaning of life. The first couple was placed in the Garden of Eden, a fertile land located near the two rivers Tigris and Euphrates in the region of modern-day Iraq. God gave them the authority to govern and the freedom to enjoy every fruit of the garden, except the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. By chapter 3, a devastating turning point occurs when a serpent appears, using deceitful words to tempt Eve into breaking the command. Linguistic and historical data point to two major misunderstandings later generations have held about this event. First, the forbidden fruit in the original text may have been a pomegranate and not an apple at all, as people often mistakenly assume because of a Latin word play between the word for evil and the word for apple. Second, the ancient text never identifies this serpent as Satan, a concept that only became truly popular thousands of years later through the work Paradise Lost in the 1600s. The consequence of this rebellious act appeared immediately and plainly. Adam and Eve became aware of their nakedness, fled, and were permanently expelled from the Garden of Eden. Let us read Genesis again. Chapter 3, verse 7 says that after they ate the forbidden fruit, the eyes of both of them were opened. They knew that they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. This tells us that both Adam and Eve had already modestly covered their bodies. So why did God still need to clothe two beings who were about to be expelled from Eden? If they were cursed sinners, two guilty beings driven out from the land of God, why did he still care for them so deeply? It was because of one thing, what the West calls love, and what the East calls compassion. And the garments of animal skin were the expression of God's compassion. Therefore, with the garments God gave them, the expulsion of Adam and Eve no longer carries only the color of tragedy. Instead, it becomes an expression of divine law that is the law of heaven, because an impure life no longer met the standard of the heavenly kingdom. It could no longer remain in the higher realm. If it stayed, would it not defile that holy realm? Therefore, that life had to fall to a lower level. If in that lower level that life still failed to meet the standard, then it would continue to fall. In that sense, the expulsion was not because God cursed them, nor because God abandoned them, but because the principles of heaven would not allow otherwise. And think about it. What would happen if a life continued creating sinful karma and kept falling in this way? That would surely be the final point of tragedy, facing endless punishment. That is why human beings need the protection of divine beings and need to be guided by divine beings so they may one day return to the kingdom of heaven. The garments that God made for Adam and Eve expressed that compassionate protection. Even so, because they had sinned and failed to obey God the Father, the final outcome for Adam and Eve was still expulsion from the Garden of Eden. They were driven out into the world to establish a new life. East of Eden, He placed angels to guard the garden. One of those angels turned a flaming sword in every direction to guard the way to the tree of life, bringing an end to the perfection of the world. Because Adam and Eve had disobeyed, they could no longer know the Garden of Eden upon the earth. But they left Eden with God's promise that one day a Savior would appear among the descendants of their descendants to wash away all sin. At the beginning of chapter 4, after leaving the absolute shelter of the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve had to face a harsh reality in barren lands. Yet the greatest punishment was not physical labor. The bloodline of the fall and the sinful self had begun to take deep root in the veins of humanity, spreading directly into the second generation and opening with the blood-stained tragedy of Cain and Abel. Cain, the older brother, bound his life to the work of farming on thorn-filled ground. Meanwhile, his younger brother Abel chose the quiet life of tending flocks. When the time came to offer sacrifices, both of them built altars to turn toward God. Cain brought produce from the crops made by his own physical labor. But Abel, with pure faith and deep reverence, offered the best firstborn lambs of his flock together with their blood. God, who clearly saw every dark thought in Cain's mind, accepted only Abel's offering by sending sacred fire to consume the sacrifice completely upon the altar. In contrast, Cain's offering was rejected. That agricultural offering lacked true reverence and exposed a heart still filled with pride and selfishness. Extreme jealousy turned Cain into the first murderer in human history when he killed his own younger brother. God carried out justice by placing a mark upon Cain's face to protect his life, but sentenced him to exile and to wander across the earth for the rest of his life. The records in chapter 5 show that humanity continued to multiply upon the earth with lifespans lasting hundreds of years, represented most famously by Methuselah, the longest living man in the Bible, who lived 969 years. Yet the more the population increased, the more human wickedness and violence spread. By chapter 6, the peak of corruption arrived when fallen angels abandoned their positions in heaven and joined themselves to human women, giving birth to a cursed race of giants known as the Nephilim. The appearance of this race severely polluted the biological and moral order of the world. Faced with that extreme corruption in the chain of events from chapter 6 to chapter 9, God decided to send a worldwide great flood to cleanse the earth, erase the nightmare of violence at its root, and leave only the family of Noah, the only righteous man of that time. Noah obeyed, absolutely building a massive ark according to the exact dimensions he was given to shelter his family and one pair of every kind of animal. After 40 days and nights of relentless rain that tore open the great fountains of water, the ark came to rest safely upon Mount Ararat. God established a new covenant using the rainbow as a sign affirming that he would never again use water to destroy the earth. Although this story shares major similarities with the Epic of Gilgamesh from the ancient Near East, the Bible still affirms a unique message about the justice and mercy of the Most High. However, by chapter 11, human pride quickly returned when people gathered in the land of Babel and joined forces to build a gigantic tower with the ambition of reaching the heavens to assert their own power. Seeing this arrogance, God immediately confused their language, causing the project to collapse and scattering the peoples across the continents of the earth. Moving into chapter 12, when the giant bricks of the Tower of Babel had crumbled into dust and humanity had been scattered across the continents, God decided to launch an entirely new path. He did not choose a dynasty or an army. Instead, he shone his attention upon Abram, a man enjoying life in Ur, one of the most splendid and bustling cities of Mesopotamia. As soon as the command from heaven came down, Abram had to cast aside every glory and luxury, cut himself off completely from his roots, and step into a lonely journey toward the promised land of Canaan. In chapter 17, as soon as Abram bowed in obedience, God immediately sealed his power. He stripped away the old name and gave him the eternal title Abraham, the one entrusted with becoming the father of many nations. On this journey, the shocking records in chapter 19 reveal a severe act of cleansing by God against the sins of mankind. The two cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were submerged in extreme moral corruption, forcing him to issue a sentence of total destruction. In the midst of that wrath, God seized Lot, Abraham's nephew, and his family to rescue them from the danger zone. The warning from the angels was absolutely decisive. They had to flee straight to the mountains, keep moving forward, and keep their eyes fixed ahead. As soon as Lot's family escaped, God immediately sent down a rain of burning fire and sulfur from heaven, consuming all the houses, lives, and vegetation of the entire plain. The tragedy reached its peak when Lot's wife broke the command. Because of her longing for the possessions and luxurious life she had just left behind, she stopped and turned her head to look back at the city burning violently. In that very moment, punishment was carried out at once. Her entire body was covered and transformed into a silent pillar of salt in the middle of the wilderness. The strictness of heavenly law moves together with the absolute faithfulness of God's promises. By chapter 21, God carried out exactly what he had declared before. At this time, Abraham had reached 100 years old, and his wife Sarah had entered the age of 90. Biologically, having a child at this age was beyond every natural law. But God gave them a direct miracle. Sarah became pregnant and gave birth to a legitimate son. Abraham named the child Isaac, which specifically means laughter, marking the family's overwhelming joy and proving the supreme power of the Creator. However, the greatest test to sift Abraham's faith officially erupted soon afterward in chapter 22. God called Abraham and gave him the harshest command of his life. Take Isaac himself, the only son whom he loved, and bring him up to the mountain in the region of Moriah as a burnt offering to him. Abraham acted immediately, obeying the command without questioning or hesitation. He rose early in the morning, split the wood with his own hands, saddled the donkey, and led Isaac on foot for 3 straight days to the appointed place. When they arrived, Abraham quietly built an altar of stone, arranged the wood upon it, then bound Isaac's hands and feet and placed him on top of the wood. He drew out the cold, sharp knife, raised his arm high, and prepared to bring it down to complete the sacrifice. At that life and death moment, a great call from an angel in heaven rang out and stopped Abraham's hand. The angel commanded him to stop and preserve the child's life because now the Most High had confirmed his absolute fear of God, since he was willing to offer his only son to him. Immediately, Abraham saw a ram caught by its horns in a nearby bush. He took it and offered it as a sacrifice in place of his son, completing the greatest test of faith in history with excellence. The bloodline of faith continued into the next generation when Isaac became the father of Jacob. By chapter 27, through wisdom and cunning, Jacob deceived his blind father to obtain the supreme blessing that had belonged to his strong older brother Esau. This deception forced Jacob to flee into the wilderness. The deception that took away the birthright forced Jacob to escape into the wilderness in order to avoid the blazing fury of his older brother Esau. On that lonely and exhausted journey, the records in chapter 28 preserve a great supernatural event. When night fell over the empty land, Jacob chose a cold stone for a pillow and sank into deep sleep. In the midst of that dream, a vast revelation opened before his eyes. Jacob saw a great ladder, its base firmly set upon the earth, while its top rose straight upward, piercing through the layers of space until it touched heaven itself. On every step of the ladder, the angels of God moved continually up and down, establishing a direct line of connection between the physical world and the Holy Kingdom. From the highest point of the ladder, the authoritative voice of God rang out. He reaffirmed the powerful covenant he had once made with Abraham, promising to give the land on which Jacob was lying to his descendants and pledging to accompany and protect him on every road. This vision completely shattered Jacob's fear, clearly proving that even while he was fleeing in the loneliest wilderness, the sharp gaze of the Most High was still watching every step. That protection continued to follow Jacob for many decades until he had to return and face his past. The most shocking turning point, the one that reshaped the entire history of the Jewish people, took place in chapter 32, that night at the ford of Jabbok beside the silent river. After his entire family and all his possessions had been sent across to the other side, Jacob remained alone in the covering darkness. Suddenly, a mysterious sacred figure appeared. Instead of speaking this, being rushed directly into a wrestling match with Jacob, the struggle was extremely fierce. It was not an illusion at all, but a physical struggle of flesh and bone. Jacob exhausted every last bit of muscular strength to grapple, holding tightly to his opponent without stopping until the light of dawn appeared. To end this test, the mysterious figure struck Jacob's hip joint with a powerful blow, causing it to be dislocated at once. Though he endured extreme physical pain, Jacob still clung tightly to his opponent, stubbornly demanding a blessing before he would let go. In return for that astonishing endurance, the sacred being stripped away the old name Jacob. He officially gave him a powerful new name, Israel, which specifically means the one who wrestles with God. When sunlight shone upon the river, Jacob was stunned to realize the great truth he had directly faced, the manifestation of the Most High, and his life had still been preserved. This painful yet sacred event left him with a permanent wound, causing him to limp for the rest of his life. But in exchange for that wound, a nation named Israel was officially conceived in the darkness of that night. The final portion of Genesis, stretching from chapter 37 to chapter 50, records in detail that Israel had 12 sons, laying the foundation for the 12 tribes that would come later. Yet he gave absolute favor to Joseph, his second youngest son, and gave him a richly colored robe. This favoritism caused jealousy to erupt among his brothers, leading them to sell Joseph as a slave into the land of Egypt. But through his calm spirit and the gift of interpreting dreams given by God, Joseph gradually rose from the dungeon and became the powerful governor in Pharaoh's court, saving the entire land of Egypt from a famine that lasted 7 years. When his brothers came humbly to Egypt to ask for food, Joseph recognized them. Instead of taking revenge, he chose forgiveness, welcoming the entire family of Jacob to leave the promised land and settle in the fertile region of Goshen in Egypt. The book of Genesis closes at this peaceful moment. It completes its mission with excellence, establishing the background for the beginning of a populous nation of Israel, preparing to enter a new chapter of trial under the condition of slavery in the next book, the book of Exodus. The peaceful era of Genesis quickly closed, giving way to one of the greatest escapes in human history, the book of Exodus. In the ancient language, Exodus carries a direct and forceful meaning, the way out. This book is a majestic chronicle recording how the Jewish people broke the chains of slavery under the empire of Egypt, under the leadership of Moses, the central figure who shaped the entire Old Testament. Right from chapter 1, the text exposes a brutal reality. After the age of the patriarch, Joseph, the Israelites settled in Egypt and grew rapidly in population. Seeing this rise, the Pharaoh ruling at that time feared an armed overthrow. He immediately issued a genocidal decree to turn all the Hebrews into slave laborers to suppress their growth, and at the same time command the savage slaughter of every newborn baby boy by throwing them into the Nile River. By chapter 2, at the very center of this massacre, one life survived through the desperate protection of his mother. She placed the baby inside a basket made of reeds, sealed it with pitch, and set it adrift along the bank of the Nile. The arranging hand of God brought the basket to the exact place where the Egyptian princess would find it. That child was adopted, given the name Moses, and raised in luxury like a powerful prince of the royal court. And yet the Hebrew blood in his veins never disappeared. When he grew up, Moses witnessed one of his enslaved countrymen being brutally beaten by an Egyptian overseer. In anger, he struck down the oppressor and killed him. This act forced him to flee a death sentence, leaving behind wealth and glory, to go deep into the wilderness of Midian, where he began a hidden life as a shepherd. The silence of the desert lasted for decades until a supernatural event appeared in chapter 3. While tending the flock near the foot of Mount Horeb, Moses stopped before an impossible sight. A bush was burning fiercely, yet it was not being consumed. From the midst of the flame, God called out and gave him an unthinkable mission: return to the stronghold of Egypt and deliver his people. When Moses questioned the identity of the one speaking to him, God answered with a declaration carrying absolute power. I am who I am, the core of the most sacred name, Yahweh, obeying the Most High. Most High from chapter 5 to chapter 12. Moses and his brother Aaron directly confronted Pharaoh. Instead of yielding, Pharaoh arrogantly refused and cruelly increased the workload of the slaves. To crush that arrogance, God sent 10 devastating plagues across all of Egypt. He turned the water of the Nile into thick blood, then poured down calamities one after another: frogs, gnats, flies, disease, boils, hail, locusts, and a suffocating darkness that covered the sky. The peak of judgment fell in the 10th plague, the Passover. Moses received the command to tell every Hebrew family to kill a young lamb and put its blood on the door frames of their homes. That night, the destroyer carried death through Egypt. He passed over the houses marked with blood, but took the lives of all the firstborn in the houses without that mark, from the child of the slave to the very crown prince of Pharaoh. Before that destructive power, Pharaoh was forced to surrender. In chapter 13 and chapter 14, hundreds of thousands of Hebrews hurried out of Egypt in the night so urgently that they had to carry bread that had not yet had time to rise. However, pride rose again. Pharaoh broke his word, gathered all his chariots and his most elite army, and pursued them with fierce determination. The Egyptian forces pressed the Israelites into a death trap right before the Red Sea. Facing the vast waters ahead and the enemy closing in behind them, God performed a shocking miracle. He commanded Moses to stretch out his hand toward the water. Immediately the sea tore open in two, lifting the waters into 2 enormous walls and creating a dry road across the seabed. The Israelites crossed safely. But when the Egyptian army recklessly charged down in pursuit, Moses lowered his hand. The 2 massive walls of water instantly collapsed, drowning and completely wiping out Pharaoh and his proud army beneath the ocean. As soon as they stepped onto the shore of freedom in chapter 15, Miriam, the sister of Moses, and all the people lifted up the song of the sea. They sang powerful words of thanksgiving, praising God as an undefeated warrior who had defeated the enemy. Researchers confirm that this passage, with its extremely ancient linguistic style, is one of the oldest texts in the Bible, reaching back to the Bronze Age. The escape from Egypt was only the beginning. God's true purpose was to shape these former slaves into a holy nation. By chapter 19 and chapter 20, The people stopped at the foot of Mount Sinai. Moses was called up to the top of the mountain, and there God personally gave him 2 stone tablets engraved with the 10 Commandments. This was the constitution that established the moral and legal foundation for the relationship between the Creator and mankind. The first commandment stands in the highest position. You shall have no other gods before me, a forceful declaration establishing monotheism and completely abolishing every form of idol worship. And yet, the weakness of human nature rose again in chapter 32. During the time Moses was absent on the mountain, the people below panicked and committed a serious sin. They gathered gold and silver and cast them into a golden calf to worship directly, breaking the second commandment. When Moses came down the mountain, carrying the 2 stone tablets, and witnessed this rebellion, he was furious and smashed the tablets of the law into pieces. He was forced to return to the top of the mountain, humbly pleading for forgiveness from God, and God mercifully gave a second set of stone tablets. Entering the final chapters from chapter 35 to chapter 40, the book of Exodus witnesses a great transition in faith. God knew clearly that in order to face the scorching heat and lurking dangers of the vast desert, a people who had just escaped slavery needed more than promises. They needed a practical anchor, a visible proof of His presence. For that reason, God commanded the Israelites to work together to build the tabernacle. There was no longer the forced labor and whips they had endured while building for Pharaoh. This time, hundreds of thousands of people willingly offered their most precious possessions, pure gold, shining silver, bronze, and finely woven linen. Under the hands of craftsmen whom God Himself had filled with wisdom, the tabernacle rose in the barren wilderness like a fragment of heaven brought down to earth. Wherever the people moved, this sacred structure was always placed at the very center of the camp, affirming one absolute truth: the Creator was directly dwelling among human beings and walking with them. And deep inside the most solemn curtain of the tabernacle, in the place called the Most Holy Place, stood the Ark of the Covenant. This was a chest crafted from the strongest acacia wood of the desert, covered inside and out with pure gold. On top of the ark, 2 golden cherubim shaped with a solemn bald-headed majesty spread their wings over a sacred space called the mercy seat. But the supreme value of the ark did not lie in the costly weight of its gold. It was great because inside it were carefully kept the 2 stone tablets engraved with the 10 Commandments, the eternal contract written by the very power of God. From the moment the lid of the ark was closed, it was no longer a lifeless object. The authoritative presence of the Most High directly descended and covered the ark. From that point on, the Ark of the Covenant became the beating heart of the entire nation of Israel. Later history would prove that this was not merely a religious symbol, but a sacred vessel carrying terrifying destructive power against any enemy that dared to block its path. The curses or swords of the enemy became meaningless, because whenever the Ark of the Covenant was carried before the army, mighty rivers had to divide and the strongest city walls immediately collapsed into level ground. The book of Exodus closes with a majestic scene. God guided His people with a massive pillar of cloud that gave shade by day and a radiant pillar of fire that led the way by night. The chains of slavery had officially been shattered, giving way to a long and difficult journey toward the Promised Land. 15 precious lessons from the book of Leviticus. This event took shape around the 15th century before Christ, precisely in the first month of the second year, after the Israelites broke the yoke of slavery and left Egypt. At that time, the entire Jewish nation was camped beneath the vast foot of Mount Sinai, facing the harshness of the desolate wilderness. As soon as the tabernacle had been fully erected at the end of the book of Exodus, the majestic presence of God immediately descended. His glory filled the sacred structure in the form of a blazing cloud, wrapped in fire, forcing even the leader Moses to remain standing outside. It was in that astonishing historical setting that a matter of life and death was immediately raised. How could a mortal nation carrying within itself a sinful nature continue to live and receive blessing right beside the absolute holiness of the Most High? To solve this question of survival, God spoke directly from within the tabernacle and gave the full chapters of the book of Leviticus. Many people, when opening this ancient text, quickly become discouraged, seeing it as a dry wilderness filled with ancient sacrificial rituals and a long series of strange laws. But the book of Leviticus is in truth a sacred survival manual, rising far above the nature of a dry legal document. It is the ultimate answer to the question above. It functions as a grand design, a strict path of discipline that helps human beings purify themselves in order to enter holiness, transforming those who had just escaped slavery into intimate companions of the Creator. Out of the 613 laws that God gave to Moses on Mount Sinai, nearly half are carefully recorded in this very book. The center of this design begins at the bronze altar of sacrifice, operated with strict order by the priesthood from the tribe of Levi. To the modern mind, animal sacrifice may feel brutal, but that was precisely God's purpose. He wanted to engrave into the human mind a harsh truth. Sin is never a small matter, and the price of sin is always life. When an Israelite brought an unblemished animal, placed it on the altar with his own hands, and watched that innocent life being taken, an overwhelming awakening would echo through his mind. The one lying there should have been me. This act of substitution is the core foundation of forgiveness, opening the way for a greater plan of salvation thousands of years later, when Jesus willingly stepped onto the cross to become the supreme sacrifice, paying the final price for all the sins of humanity. Once blood had been shed and forgiveness had been established, human beings could then offer a peace offering. This was a beautiful moment when the sinner was restored to relationship and allowed to sit down and share a sacred meal in the very presence of the Creator. To maintain that fellowship, God commanded that the fire on the altar be kept burning continually by day and by night, as a living testimony that He was always ready to forgive. However, approaching the most holy place was never a game. God established an extremely strict boundary between life and death. Obedience brings blessing, while disobedience means death. This warning was proven by blood in chapter 10, when the two sons of the priest Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu dared to bring strange fire without reverence into the holy place. Immediately fire from God came down and consumed them. This shocking event established a majestic reality: no mortal human being is allowed to enter the space of the Most High with arrogance or half-hearted commitment. That holiness was not locked inside the temple. It spread outward and shaped all of daily life. God established a perfect system of survival rules to guide every aspect of the people's lives. He instructed them on how to isolate and handle the disease of leprosy, a brutal physical demonstration of how severely sin can corrode a person and cut him off from the community. Moving beyond matters of the body, He trained integrity in speech, warning human beings not to make careless vows because betrayal would directly offend the trustworthiness of the Creator. Most representative of daily life was the law concerning food. He drew a clear boundary between clean and unclean animals, absolutely forbade the consumption of pork, and gave the required principle of fully separating meat and milk in daily meals. Throughout this massive body of laws, readers often ask, why did God give human beings so many prohibitions? The answer lies in the absolute love of a father. God saw clearly the wild and bloody customs of the Egyptian culture they had just left behind, as well as the corruption of the land of Canaan they were about to enter. The giving of these regulations was a protective shield. The center of the entire body of law is condensed into one resounding call. You shall be holy, for I, Jehovah your God, am holy. He wanted to turn every meal, every small action into a ritual, reminding them to dare to live differently without being absorbed by the crowd. That difference reached its height through an economic concept that shook every foundation of power the year of Jubilee. God declared forcefully that all land on this planet belongs to Him. Human beings are only temporary stewards. To prevent the formation of a ruthless, super-rich class and to destroy the seed of slavery, every cycle of 50 years, all debts would be wiped clean, every slave would be set free, and the land had to be returned to its original owner. It was a perfect social design, breaking the grip of material greed and bringing hope to the poorest of the poor. The book of Leviticus closes by placing the Israelites before a fateful crossroads in chapter 26. Obedience would open endless treasures of blessing, while rebellion would bring devastating consequences upon itself. Yet above every warning, this book leaves behind a promise with absolute healing power. God said, "I will walk among you. I will be your God, and you will be my people. I have broken the yoke of slavery. Now lift your heads high and walk." After thousands of years and countless collapses of kingdoms, the power of the book of Leviticus has not faded. Even today, Orthodox Jewish communities around the world continue steadfastly observing these ancient commandments. To them, living according to the book of Leviticus is not a burden from the past, but a sacred privilege, an affirmation of absolute faith in the eternal covenant between human beings and the Most High. Today, although we walk in an entirely new era, where the rituals of offering the blood of lambs upon the altar have completely ended, the book of Leviticus still holds an overwhelming awakening power for every modern believer. This book serves as the most truthful mirror, exposing the terrible price of forgiveness. When reading and understanding the strict regulations required for every stain of sin in the past, people today can truly measure the great weight of grace. It shatters the careless mindset of the modern world and forces us to look again at the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross with absolute reverence. Going deeper into practical life, in a world drowning in moral corruption, greed, and deceit, the book of Leviticus rings out like a powerful alarm bell. It forcefully affirms that God cares about every detail of human life, from what we put into our bodies to how we treat the vulnerable people around us. Opening this book is a way for the believer to train in the art of establishing boundaries. It provides a discipline of iron, helping us build a strong fortress wall to protect the mind from the corrupting habits of the age. The call to be holy has crossed beyond the boundaries of the ancient tabernacle and become a direct command for each person at this very moment. Cast off the temptations of the crowd, stand firm in purity, and walk with authority as an heir of the covenant of the Most High in the world. The Book of Numbers and the 40-year journey to the Promised Land. The book of Leviticus had established a perfect system of law to purify the Israelite. But that holiness was never meant to remain hidden forever at the foot of Mount Sinai. It was the essential equipment preparing them for a life and death march. And when the command to break camp was given, the book of Numbers officially opened a chapter of history filled with blood, tears, and the harshest trials in the wilderness. In the ancient Hebrew original, this book bears the name Bamidbar, which directly means in the wilderness. However, world history knows it more commonly by the name Numbers, derived from the first command God gave to conduct a massive census in order to calculate the military strength of the people. The grand scene of chapter 1 opens not with a chaotic crowd of refugee slaves fleeing Egypt. Under the command of Moses, the 12 tribes of Israel were now reorganized into a mighty army with iron discipline and precise marching formations. At the center of those millions of people stood the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant, always covered by the cloud of glory of the Most High. From chapter 1 to chapter 10, the army moved with an atmosphere of overwhelming majesty. They drew close to the border of the promised land of Canaan, where milk and honey were waiting. Yet the greatest tragedy of the book of Numbers did not come from the swords of the enemy, but from the cowardice inside the human mind. Outwardly, they were a mighty army with hundreds of thousands of warriors, properly armed, arranged in perfect formation around the tabernacle, and guided by the blazing pillar of fire of the Creator himself. Any empire looking upon that mass of strength would have trembled. Yet the greatest tragedy of the book of Numbers did not come from the swords or chariots of the enemy. It came from a weapon far more vicious: cowardice, deeply rooted inside the human mind. That cowardice was not merely fear before towering city walls or the bloodthirsty giants of the land of Canaan. Far more terrifying, it was a total collapse of faith. Those millions of people had once seen the waters of the Red Sea split open before their own eyes. They had seen the pride of Pharaoh buried beneath the ocean floor. And every morning, they were fed by food that fell from heaven. And yet, with only one fearful report from 10 spies, the entire memory of those great miracles was instantly erased. The disease of unbelief spread like a plague in the night. Instead of taking up swords and spears to fight for the freedom God had promised them, millions of people chose to cry out in despair. Every tragedy began at the border of Kadesh Barnea, where the army of Israel stood only one step away from the Promised Land. There in chapter 13, Moses decided to send 12 of the finest spies representing the 12 tribes to secretly enter Canaan and scout out the military situation and the terrain. 40 days later, they returned safely to the camp. At first, the scene was radiant with hope as they carried back a cluster of grapes so enormous the 2 men had to carry it on a pole along with pomegranates and figs. It was the absolute physical proof of God's promise. The land before them was truly fertile, flowing with milk and honey. But just as the excitement of millions of people began to rise, 10 of the spies stepped forward and brutally poured cold water over the entire camp. They boldly delivered a report that spread extreme terror. With trembling voices, they spoke of fortified cities with walls rising high into the heavens. And most frightening of all, they claimed they had seen the giants of Anakim with their own eyes, descendants of the bloodthirsty Nephilim race of old. These 10 spies planted the deepest inferiority in the people's minds. By placing this poisonous thought inside them, before them we seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. And surely they saw us the same way. That report was like a dose of poison that devastated the mind. It immediately spread like a great epidemic, crushing the entire fighting spirit of the army. Instead of clinging to the power of God, the one who had once drowned the Egyptian empire for their sake, millions of Israelites allowed fear to swallow their minds completely. Throughout that night, every section of the camp sank into weeping panic and bitter despair. Faith shattered, giving way to resentment. Then, that psychological collapse exploded into a fierce rebellion as the story moved into chapter 14. The peak of corruption came when hundreds of thousands of people gathered together, their eyes burning with irrational rage. They surrounded Moses, Aaron, and the 2 faithful spies, Caleb and Joshua, demanding to stone them to death simply because these men dared to urge them to move forward with courage. The fear from the report of the 10 spies had completely defeated millions of Israelites. That night, panic tore through the darkness of the wilderness. The entire army cried out and bitterly complained against God. Despite the desperate intervention of the 2 faithful spies, Caleb and Joshua, who tore their clothes as they begged the crowd to hold firm in faith, all the people still sank into madness. The height of corruption came when they picked up stones preparing to kill their leaders and stubbornly demanded that a new leader be appointed to take them back to Egypt. They would rather bow their knees and crawl back into the yoke of slavery. They would rather submit again to the bloody lashes of their oppressors just to live in safety than dare to stake their lives on the Most High and rise up to take the Promised Land. At the very moment the stones were about to be raised, the radiant glory of God suddenly descended and covered the tabernacle. Before that extreme unbelief and rebellion, mercy came to an end. A forceful and painful judgment was declared in chapter 14. Except for Caleb and Joshua, the entire cowardly slave generation from 20 years old and upward, those who had seen the sea split in two with their own eyes and still refused to trust the power of the Creator, would never be allowed to set foot in the Promised Land. God forced them to turn back. Based on the 40 days the spies had spent scouting the land, He converted that into a sentence of 40 years of wandering. The price of rebellion was time. One by one, every person in that weak generation would grow old, fall, and be buried beneath the burning sands of the desert. That aimless wandering was a harsh but necessary purification-making room for a new generation born and raised in freedom, people who had not been infected with the slave mentality and who carried enough courage to inherit the covenant. And then those long 40 years finally came to an end. The footprints of the final rebel had been completely erased by the desert sands. The path of the Bible moved straight toward a new historical boundary where the book of Deuteronomy rose like one of the most tragic and powerful epics in the entire Old Testament. At this moment, the second-generation army of Israel stood on the vast plains of Moab, right beside the bank of the Jordan River. Before them, separated by only one river, was the Promised Land that had been waiting for centuries. Standing before millions of young warriors burning with determination, Moses, the great leader who had now reached 120 years old, prepared to speak. He knew clearly that his time had run out and that he would not cross that river with them. The book of Deuteronomy, meaning the second law or the repetition of the law, was born right at this boundary between life and death. It is not a notebook of new laws, but the final 3 speeches of Moses, filled with all the force of his heart. In a voice both solemn and urgent, he reviewed the entire blood-soaked history of the wilderness, reminded them of the mistakes of their fathers, and engraved the covenant of God into the minds of the generation preparing for war. Moses looked straight at the young warriors and set before them the ultimate choice in chapter 30. He summed up the entire meaning of human life in one sharp command. Today I set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life. He required them to obey, to fear God, to love Him with all their hearts, and to write His law upon their foreheads and upon the doors of their homes. In contrast, if they compromised and followed the pagan idols of the native inhabitants, destruction would certainly come upon them. This final speech served as a firm spiritual anchor, equipping them with a faith as sharp as steel before they entered the bloody battles waiting ahead. When the final instruction was completed, the great mission of Moses also came to an end. In obedience to the quiet command of the Most High, he silently walked alone up the summit of Mount Nebo, leaving behind millions of people watching him with their eyes fixed upon him. From that breathtaking height, God allowed him to cast his gaze across the full panorama of the fertile Promised Land, from the region of Gilead all the way to the distant Western Sea. There, in that quiet and majestic scene, the greatest leader of Israel breathed his last. His death did not carry the color of misery or defeat. It was a complete rest, a perfect transfer arranged by the hand of God. And God Himself buried him in a secret valley, so that no one knows the place of his tomb to this very day, forever preventing human beings from turning him into an idol to be worshipped. The scepter of leadership was officially passed to Joshua, the faithful warrior of old, now filled with the spirit of wisdom. The book of Deuteronomy closes with solemn dignity, marking the perfect ending point of the Pentateuch, the 5 foundational books that shape the entire Bible. 40 years of wandering had ended. The cycle of punishment had been broken. Now, millions of Israelites stood breathless on the bank of the Jordan River, their hands gripping their weapons, waiting for the command to advance to raise high the banner of the Most High and officially enter the era of conquest and possession of the land of their fathers. Everything was ready for the next book. When the towering figure of Moses disappeared behind the summit of Mount Nebo, the age of waiting and the age of formal law officially came to an end. The first sword stroke that cut through the silence of 40 years of wandering was the book of Joshua. This book opens the sequence of Old Testament chronicles that record the formation of the ancient kingdom of Israel, marking the beginning of a fierce era of conquest to take possession of the promised land of Canaan. As recorded from chapter 1 to chapter 4, under the leadership of the strategic and faith-filled commander, Joshua, millions of Israelites began their march. God performed a miracle just like the Red Sea of old. The rushing waters of the Jordan River were immediately stopped and dried up, opening a safe road for the entire army to enter the territory of Canaan. However, as soon as they set foot in the new land, moving into chapter 5 and chapter 6, they immediately faced their first military test and also the most famous battle in the entire history of the Bible, the Siege of Jericho. From the outside, Jericho appeared like an impregnable fortress. Its massive fortified walls were designed to crush any army that dared to come near. The Israelites had no catapults, no siege engines, and were completely inferior in terms of weapons. And yet the strategy God gave Joshua ignored every ordinary rule of military logic. He did not command them to attack. Instead, he ordered the army to remain absolutely silent, carry the Ark of the Covenant as the center point, and march around the city walls once each day for 6 consecutive days. The tension reached its peak on the 7th day. That morning, the army of Israel marched around the city not just once, but 7 times in a row. At the front of the formation were 7 priests, each carrying a trumpet made from a ram's horn. As soon as the 7th round ended, Joshua gave the command, and the trumpets sounded together, tearing through the silent air. Hundreds of thousands of Israelite soldiers raised a thunderous shout. The miracle descended at once. Without any physical blow from a weapon, the massive stone walls of Jericho shook violently and collapsed completely into level ground before their eyes. When the defensive line was neutralized by supernatural power, the army of Israel flooded into the city. From here, the book of Joshua reveals its harshest side, turning it into a text soaked in the violence of the ancient world. Under the command, recorded in the text, the Israelites carried out the principle of total devotion, called herem in ancient Hebrew, meaning complete destruction. The city of Jericho was utterly destroyed. The sword of the army spared no one, from men, women, the elderly, and children, to all the livestock. The fall of Jericho was not the end, but only the opening shot of an unprecedented military campaign. From chapter 7 to chapter 12, the fire of war spread and burned through the entire power structure of the land of Canaan. However, this conquest was not easy. The Israelites quickly learned that the support of the Most High came with absolute boundaries. In the battle against the small city of Joshua's army tasted its first humiliating defeat simply because one soldier named Achan had secretly broken the ban and hidden plunder for himself. Only when the sin inside the camp was strictly purged did victory return to them. Once discipline was restored, the war machine of Israel advanced with unstoppable force. On the southern battlefield, when 5 kings of the Amorites formed an alliance to attack Joshua, carried out a lightning-fast march through the night to launch a surprise strike. The greatest scene of this battle is recorded when Joshua cried out to the Most High to intervene in the laws of the universe. The sun and the moon stood still over the valley of Ajalon, extending the daylight, so the army of Israel could finish its pursuit. Soon afterward, on the northern battlefield, the alliance of the Canaanite kingdoms gathered a massive army with chariots and war horses as numerous as the sand on the seashore, led by King Jabin of Hazor. With a sudden preemptive strike at the waters of Merom, Joshua shattered this entire alliance, hamstrung their horses, burned their chariots, and completely destroyed Hazor, the most powerful capital of the entire north. One by one, 31 kings of Canaan fell beneath the sword of Israel. Facing these lines of text, readers of the 21st century cannot help but shudder. The book of Joshua describes a total destruction aimed at entire populations, leaving no living creature behind. Seen through the lens of modern morality, it is shocking and very difficult to receive. However, scholars of religious history point out that the Bible does not avoid or conceal this bloody truth. Instead, it places it within a vast and extremely strict theological framework. This war was never meant to promote imperialism, greed for plunder, or ordinary human territorial expansion. The destruction of the Canaanites is defined by the ancient text as herem, a total devotion to the Most High and the carrying out of a judgment of justice that had been delayed for centuries. According to the records in the book of Genesis, God once told the patriarch Abraham that he would wait for more than 400 years because the sin of the Amorites, the inhabitants of Canaan, had not yet reached its full measure. That patience finally came to an end. The civilization of Canaan at that time had reached the bottom of moral corruption, with deeply savage practices such as throwing living infants into the blazing fire inside the bronze idol of the god Moloch, along with countless immoral and inhuman rituals. Therefore, within the theological structure of the Old Testament, the Promised Land was not merely changing owners, it was being cleansed. Joshua's bloody conquest was not a war between two nations, but functioned like a severe surgery to remove a malignant tumor. That destruction was the strictest form of quarantine meant to cleanse a land defiled to its very roots, completely prevent the Israelites from being infected and assimilated, and protect the sacred covenant, the covenant that would later shape the entire history of humanity, so that it could remain intact. After the sound of swords faded, the second half of the book, stretching from chapter 13 to chapter 22, shifts into an entirely different rhythm, the division of territory. The vast Promised Land was carefully measured and divided by Joshua into separate inheritances for the 12 tribes of Israel. God's 1,000-year promise to the patriarch Abraham was finally made real through firm physical borders on the map. The book of Joshua closes with an emotional scene in chapter 23 and chapter 24. Joshua, the once undefeated commander, had now grown old and stood at the threshold of death. He summoned all the leaders and the people of Israel to deliver one final charge. With tremendous resolve, he commanded them to cast aside every false idol and commit themselves in absolute loyalty to the Creator. His declaration became one of the most powerful statements in biblical history. If you do not want to serve Jehovah, then choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my household, we will serve him. The book ends with the death of Joshua and the burial of the bones of the patriarch Joseph in the Promised Land, marking the moment when the Israelites had fully taken root in their new homeland, bringing the wilderness era to a complete end and opening the age of the Judges. The book of Judges, the darkest period of ancient Israel. When the sound of swords from the age of conquest under Joshua had just fallen silent, a massive power vacuum immediately appeared. The book of Judges, also known as the Book of Leaders, continues the flow of history. But instead of painting a glorious picture of settlement, This book throws the reader into one of the darkest, most chaotic, and most morally corrupt periods of ancient Israel. At that time, Israel was not a unified nation, but only a loose collection of tribes. They had no king to rule over them. As recorded from chapter 1 to chapter 3, the root cause of the tragedy is immediately exposed. After Joshua died, the next generation of Israelites made a deadly mistake. They ignored God's command and refused to completely drive out the native Canaanites. That compromise came at an extremely high price. Living together, intermarrying, and staying too close to evil wore down the boundary of holiness, causing them to lose the special protection of the Most High. The book leaves behind a sharp survival lesson for every age. When human beings refuse to firmly say no to evil, they cannot expect God to clear the darkness out of their lives. The dust of corruption quickly covered the covenant. The Israelites turned their backs on the Creator and rushed into the worship of pagan idols. This rebellion activated a brutal cycle of sin that governs the entire book. That cycle operated like a blood-soaked machine. The people rebelled. God withdrew His protection and allowed them to be attacked and trampled by foreign enemies. Under that cruel oppression, they cried out for forgiveness. And God, moved by compassion, raised up a judge, a military leader, to lead several tribes in driving out the enemy. But as soon as that leader died and peace was restored, the next generation sank even deeper into sins worse than those of the generation before. That cycle continued to crush history again and again. The chronicle of the leaders begins with thunderous victories, yet also with extreme violence, represented by the left-handed assassin Ehud in chapter 3, who hit a sword and assassinated the king of Moab inside a private chamber. But the most striking moment comes in chapter 4 and chapter 5 with the appearance of an extraordinary female leader, the prophetess Deborah. In the midst of a male-dominated society, Deborah rose with great strength, holding both spiritual and political authority. Her prophecy was absolutely accurate, clearly proving that God never discriminates based on gender or physical strength. Together with General Barak and the brutal finishing blow of Jael, the woman who used a hammer to drive a tent peg through the temple of the enemy commander, Sisera, the book affirms that anyone can become a great weapon of the Most High if they allow Him to act. However, the light of the early heroes was gradually swallowed by the darkness of compromise. Moving into chapter 6, faced with the brutal raids of the Midianites, God called Gideon, a young man hiding in fear, inside a winepress to rise up as a leader. Gideon lacked confidence, and he repeatedly demanded that God prove His power through the test of the fleece. God is merciful enough to listen when we are afraid and lost. Yet once He is given a promise, demanding again and again that He produce miracles to prove Himself becomes an offense. After God reduced Gideon's army to only 300 warriors and gave him a brilliant victory, Gideon did something deeply honorable. He refused the crown offered by the people and affirmed that only God was king. Yet tragedy came immediately afterward. Although Gideon resisted the temptation of political power, he fell before the temptation of gold. By using the spoils of war to make a sacred ephod, he unintentionally created an idol trap, causing the people to turn toward material worship instead of the Creator. The corruption continued to slide downward, and by chapter 10, the wrath of the Most High had reached its limit. After being trampled by enemies for 18 years, the Israelites once again repeated their song of weeping and pleading for rescue. But this time God responded with a cold refusal. He told them to go and cry out to the false gods they had chosen. It was a slap meant to awaken humanity in every age. Human beings often call upon the name of the Most High only as a last option when every door has slammed shut, or remember Him only in disaster and forget Him in peace. Yet with the love of a Father God ultimately could not bear to abandon His people. He continued to raise up new leaders, but their moral quality became increasingly degraded represented by Jephthah in chapter 11. Driven by the desire to prove himself, Jephthah made a foolish vow leading to the tragedy of sacrificing his own only daughter in exchange for victory. The peak of wasted potential and personal collapse is fully gathered in the most famous figure of the book, Samson, recorded in detail from chapter 13 to chapter 16. Consecrated from his mother's womb through the absolute faith of his parents, Samson possessed unmatched supernatural physical strength. But that muscular strength came together with an arrogant self and an extreme weakness before lust. Samson repeatedly broke the laws of holiness and finally fell completely before the cunning of the beautiful Delilah. Many people mistakenly think Samson's long hair was the source of his strength. But in truth, it was only the outward symbol of a covenant he had already shattered from within with his own hands. Shaved, bald, blinded in both eyes, and bound with bronze chains in a Philistine prison, his great career seemed to have ended in humiliation. But Samson's bloody ending offers a great lesson about salvation. With the last of his strength, a sincere prayer rising from the darkness brought sacred power back to him. He pulled down the enemy temple and buried thousands of lives beneath it. His life proves one truth: it is never too late to return and seek God. Although the book of Judges is a book about heroes, most of them are not truly admirable. Israel at that time was like a barrel of milk gradually going sour, and the judges were the layer of cream floating on top. Sadly, even that layer of cream had begun to stink. The epilogue of the book, stretching from chapter 17 to chapter 21, is truly an express train rushing straight down into the depths of moral hell. No leader remained to rise up and save the situation. The final chapters expose a lawless and utterly rotten society, reaching its peak in the assault, gang rape, and savage murder of a woman in the city of Gibeah. This horrifying crime ignited a bloody civil war, nearly wiping the tribe of Benjamin completely off the map. The book closes with a cold and haunting summary that captures the entire tragedy of the age. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. They had thrown away the word of the Most High as the standard for right and wrong, and chose to live by only one frame of reference: whatever feels right to myself. History has proven that when human beings ignore God's standard, society will slide downward without an endpoint. The corruption, deception, and violence of Israel in the time of the Judges is a direct mirror reflecting the moral diseases now destroying the modern world. As long as human beings are not ready to kneel down, weep, beg for forgiveness, and commit to living again according to holy standards, healing for a wounded land will never appear. Chaos had reached the bottom, and Israel now longed for a king more than ever. The era of monarchy and exile. The rise, fall, and restoration of an empire. The cry demanding a king at the end of the period of the Judges pushed Israel's history into an entirely new turning point. The people abandoned the structure of direct theocracy in exchange for a monarchy like the pagan nations around them. The two books of Samuel, 1st and 2nd Samuel, together with the book of 1st Chronicles, form the opening chapter that records the entire process of formation, development, and golden age of the United Kingdom of Israel. This great transition was led by Samuel the prophet and also the final judge. Under pressure from the people, he anointed Saul as king, a man with a remarkably tall and impressive appearance. But Saul quickly revealed his arrogance, repeatedly disobeying the commands of God delivered through the prophets, forcing the Most High to remove the kingship from him and from his bloodline. The darkness of Saul's reign was quickly overshadowed by the appearance of the greatest king in the history of Israel, David. Rising from an unknown shepherd boy, David proved his absolute faith and courage when he struck down the giant Goliath with a single stone. After many years of being hunted by Saul in madness, David officially ascended the throne after Saul died in battle. Under David's rule, the kingdom of Israel exploded with unprecedented military strength. He completely defeated long-standing enemies such as the Philistines, the Moabites, and the Ammonites, expanding the borders of the realm as far as the Euphrates River. The most important historical event of his reign was the capture of the fortress of the Jebusites, turning it into the fortified capital of Jerusalem and bringing the Ark of the Covenant to be placed at the center of the city. God established an eternal covenant with David. His descendants would sit upon the throne forever. Although David committed a grave sin in the case of adultery with Bathsheba and the killing of General Uriah, he repented deeply of his sin and kept a heart that feared God until his final breath. David's prosperity laid the foundation for the absolute golden age under his son Solomon, recorded in the book of 1 Kings and the book of 2 Chronicles. Given extraordinary wisdom, Solomon turned Israel into a center of trade and power in the ancient world. His greatest act was fulfilling his father's dream, mobilizing hundreds of thousands of laborers, using the most precious cedar wood from Lebanon and tons of pure gold to build the first temple for God in Jerusalem. Solomon's temple stood as an architectural wonder, the fixed dwelling place of the Most High among his people. Yet excessive wealth gave birth to corruption. At the end of his life, Solomon made a great mistake by marrying thousands of foreign wives, setting up altars to false gods right in the capital, and forcing the people into heavy labor. This disobedience ignited a sentence of national division immediately after his death, stretching throughout the books of 1 and 2 Kings. The United Kingdom of Israel was officially torn in two under King Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. The 10 tribes in the north broke away to establish the Kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom led by Jeroboam, while the 2 tribes in the south remained loyal to the line of David and formed the Kingdom of Judah, the southern kingdom controlling the capital city of Jerusalem. From this point on, the history of the 2 kingdoms slid into civil wars and serious religious decay. In the northern kingdom, all 19 kings in succession committed the sin of rebellion. They completely abolished the worship of God, set up golden calves, and tolerated the immoral rites of the god Baal. Despite the sharp warnings and powerful miracles of great prophets such as Elijah and Elisha, the leaders and the people of the north still refused to turn back. The patience of heaven ended in 722 before Christ. God allowed the brutal Assyrian Empire to sweep in, crush the capital city of Samaria, destroy, plunder, and exile the entire population of Israel to distant lands, completely erasing the northern kingdom from the map of history. The southern kingdom of Judah survived longer thanks to a few righteous kings who carried out religious reforms such as Hezekiah and Josiah. However, the generations of kings who followed also quickly sank deep into the corruption of the surrounding pagan nations. They turned the holy temple into a place of idol worship and carried out cruel acts of social injustice. At the end of the book of 2 Kings, the final judgment was officially executed in 586 before Christ. Emperor Nebuchadnezzar of the Babylonian Empire brought his vast army and laid siege to the capital city of Jerusalem. After months of extreme hunger and thirst inside the city, the defensive line completely collapsed. The Babylonian army poured in, set fire to the great Temple of Solomon, smashed the fortified city walls, confiscated all the vessels made of pure gold, and dragged tens of thousands of the people of Judah into the sorrowful exile in Babylon that lasted 70 years. The prophetic promise of a terrible punishment was fulfilled with exact detail. The monarchy collapsed, the nation was erased, and the Jewish people lost their homeland. Yet God never abandoned the covenant. When the 70-year period of exile came to an end, history witnessed a great political miracle recorded in the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah. The Babylonian Empire was overthrown by the Persian Empire. Emperor Cyrus the Great, under the powerful movement of the Most High, issued a decree that shook history. the Jewish people were allowed to freely return to their homeland and rebuild their nation. The return from exile was divided into 3 great waves. The first wave was led by Zerubbabel, focusing on clearing the ashes and rebuilding the foundation of the Second Temple. When the final stone of the temple was completed, the choked weeping of the elderly, who had once seen the former temple, mingled with the shouts of joy from the new generation, marking the restoration of the center of worship. The second wave was led by the scholar Ezra. He carried the mission of restoring the law, correcting moral life, and cleansing the fallenness of the community. The third wave was commanded by Governor Nehemiah, facing the fierce, armed opposition of the surrounding tribes. Nehemiah organized a rapid military-style construction campaign. The workers held a trowel in one hand to build the wall, and gripped swords and spears tightly in the other. In only 52 short days, the entire fortified wall of Jerusalem was firmly rebuilt, restoring protective sovereignty to the holy city. Alongside the work of rebuilding in the homeland, the fate of the Jewish people who still chose to live in the lands of the Persian Empire is portrayed dramatically in the Book of Esther. The setting takes place in the powerful royal court of Susa. Haman, the wicked prime minister of Persia, out of arrogance, created a brutal genocidal plan to massacre all the Jewish people in a single day. In the midst of that dark plot, Esther, an orphaned Jewish girl chosen to become queen, had to stand before a life-and-death decision. Risking her own life, she dared to enter the inner court without being summoned by the king in order to expose Haman's crime. The enemy's plan was completely reversed. Haman was hanged on the very gallows he had built to destroy the Jewish people, while the Jewish people were granted a decree of self-defense to crush every force that attacked them. Although the Book of Esther is the only book in the Bible that never once mentions the name of God, the entire chain of seemingly impossible coincidences in the story stands as forceful proof that the silent yet absolute arranging hand of the Most High was always protecting the covenant people from annihilation, even in a foreign land. The era of monarchy and exile closes with the image of the Jewish people having restored their temple, their city walls, and their faith. They were no longer a mighty military empire, as in the days of David or Solomon, but they had become a community refined through the fire of trial, ready to stand firm and wait for the appearance of the Messiah in the next chapters of history. The poetry and wisdom books, the symphony of the soul and the depths of human existence. When the sound of swords from the royal dynasties had fallen silent, and the fire that burned Jerusalem had left only piles of ashes behind the Bible, suddenly changes direction. Setting aside mighty armies, arrogant kings, and historical judgments, for a moment, the poetry and wisdom books lead the reader into a battlefield 1,000 times more fierce and more torn apart, the inner world of the human being. This is not the place for recording geographical or legal events. This is a deep silence, where every moral covering is stripped away, exposing the most painful questions, the strongest longings, and the deepest despair of humanity before the Creator. This massive psychological structure is formed by 5 great books: the Book of Job, the Book of Psalms, the Book of Proverbs, the Book of Ecclesiastes, and finally, the Song of Songs. Instead of following chronological order or royal dynasties, these 5 books are placed side by side to create a complete anatomical map of the soul. Each book represents an opposing yet deeply truthful color of human existence, from the absolute depth of suffering and the questioning of fate in the Book of Job, to songs of praise mixed with the choked cries of grief in the Book of Psalms, the sharp daily survival philosophy of the Book of Proverbs, the suffocating despair before the seeming meaninglessness of human life in the Book of Ecclesiastes, and finally the radiant and purest height of exalted love in the Song of Songs. Together they lead the reader into a battlefield 1,000 times more fierce and more torn apart, the inner world of the human being, the place where every moral covering is stripped away, exposing the most painful questions, the strongest longings, and the deepest despair of humanity before the Creator. Opening this psychological structure is the Book of Job, a great work that challenges every limit of faith's endurance. Job is not a warrior. He is an exceptionally righteous man, wealthy and happy. Yet the Book of Job shatters the human habit of thinking that good people always receive good things. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, The Prelude Beneath Heaven. The book opens with a cosmic courtroom. Satan appears before the throne of God and issues a cruel challenge. Job only fears God because he has been blessed. If everything is taken from him, he will curse him. God allows Satan to act. In only one day, tragedy falls like a storm that sweeps everything away. All his property is plundered, thousands of livestock are burned, and most devastating of all 10 of his children are crushed to death beneath the ruins of a violent windstorm. It does not stop there. His body is covered with sores from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. From chapter 3 to chapter 31, the fierce debate. The scene moves down to the earth. Sitting among the ashes, using a piece of broken pottery to scrape his bleeding skin, Job breaks the silence by cursing the day he was born in chapter 3. His 3 friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, come to comfort him, but quickly turn to accusation, insisting that Job must have committed some terrible sin to be punished so severely. Job angrily rejects every charge. He roars out the sharpest questions directly toward heaven, demanding that the Most High step forward and answer for the injustice of his fate. From chapter 32 to chapter 37, the anger of Elihu. A young man named Elihu appears angrily rejecting all 3 friends because of their shallow understanding and rebuking Job for daring to consider himself more righteous than God. Elihu's words prepare the way for the greatest appearance. From chapter 38 to chapter 41, the voice in the whirlwind, the climax of the book, erupts. God finally appears, not with gentle words of comfort, but speaking from the center of a massive whirlwind. He gives no explanation for Job's suffering. Instead, he sends down a rapid series of questions about the construction of the universe, the constellations, and the mastery of terrifying wild creatures, such as Behemoth and Leviathan. Chapter 42, the ending. That absolute authority causes Job to tremble and cover his mouth. He confesses the smallness and weakness of human reason before the endless cosmic wisdom of the Most High and humbles himself in repentance among dust and ashes. God restores Job's honor, gives him double his former possessions and a new family, and closes the story with the great mystery of divine sovereignty. The Book of Psalms, 150, Heartbeats of the Soul. If Job is the scream of suffering, then the Book of Psalms is the complete soundtrack of the soul. With 150 poems stretching across many centuries, most of them written by King David, this is the only book in the Bible where human beings speak directly to God. To reflect the Pentateuch of Moses, these 150 poems are tightly structured into 5 books. Book 1 and Book 2 from Psalm 1 to Psalm 72. These portray David's inner battles and his flights for survival. This is where some of the darkest and most suffocating laments are found, such as Psalm 22, where the author sinks to the bottom of betrayal, surrounded by enemies and death. They cry out, "My God, why have you forsaken me? Why do you stand far away and not save me?" The fact that the Bible preserves these cries in full affirms a powerful truth. The Most High receives even anger, fear, and choked tears, transforming them into sacred prayers. Book 3 and Book 4 from Psalm 73 to Psalm 106. The melody shifts into the darkness of Jerusalem's collapse. The poems reflect the tears of exile and the nation's overwhelming confusion, but finally recover the anchor of faith by remembering how God guided Moses and the patriarchs in the past. Book 5, from Psalm 107 to Psalm 150. The book rises to the summit of light. The final chapters are radiant songs of glorious praise, hallelujah resounding with lyres, harps, and trumpets, affirming that God alone is the true King of all creation. The Book of Proverbs, the constitution of wisdom. After exposing every raw emotion, the Bible provides a practical anchor to guide life. Drawn mainly from the wisdom of King Solomon, this book functions as a sharp survival manual in the real world. From chapter 1 to chapter 9, the call of two women. The book does not immediately list rules. It opens with heartfelt counsel from a father to his son. This group of chapters personifies two forces wrestling for the human mind: Lady Wisdom, who calls for disciplined knowledge and the fear of God, standing in complete opposition to Woman Folly, who lurks on the street corners, seducing human beings into the path of lust, violence, and laziness. From chapter 10 to chapter 29, the core laws. Setting aside miracles that divide waters or fire falling from heaven. This section teaches human beings about the iron physical law of cause and effect. In the earthly world, the lazy person will go hungry, the proud person will stumble, and deceit will lead to destruction. Each short proverb trains the mind to stand firm so it will not be swallowed by ordinary temptations. Chapter 30 and chapter 31. The perfect ending. The book closes with the words of Agur on extreme humility before the Creator and the famous poem of King Lemuel honoring the woman of noble character, the highest symbol of wisdom brought into practice within family and society. The book of Ecclesiastes, the ultimate existential crisis. And yet, even when human beings have grasped every summit of wisdom, power, and wealth according to the standard of Proverbs, a severe existential crisis immediately arrives. That is when the book of Ecclesiastes speaks. The voice of Ecclesiastes is cold, practical, and philosophically the most ruthless in the entire Bible. From chapter 1 to chapter 6, the harsh reality of Hevel. The author identifies himself as Koheleth, the preacher, and speaks a haunting keyword that runs throughout the book: Hevel, a Hebrew word meaning vapor or vanity. He tests every aspect of earthly life, pursuing great knowledge, immersing himself in pleasure, building magnificent palaces, and accumulating enormous wealth. But he realizes that every human effort is finally as meaningless as chasing the wind. Injustice always remains, and time ruthlessly steals everything away. From chapter 7 to chapter 12, the shadow of death. The tension reaches its height when the author points to the final common denominator of humanity: death. Death levels all people. It buries the wise and the fool, the rich and the slave alike. This ultimate dead end forces human beings to face their own smallness and limitation. Then, in the final lines of chapter 12, he gives the one truth that allows human beings to anchor themselves in a meaningless world. Fear God and keep His commandments. For this is the whole meaning of human existence. The song of songs, the fire of love. And then, just as the despair of Ecclesiastes pulls the human mind down into the depths of coldness, the song of songs bursts forth like the brightest flame of warmth. From chapter 1 to chapter 8, the eternal love song. The book that closes the poetry section is a passionate, romantic, and astonishingly bold love song. There are no prohibitive laws, no shadow of war, deception, or death. Across all 8 chapters, there is the deeply emotional dialogue, the longing search, the losing and finding again of a man and a woman. Every moist line of poetry filled with images of vineyards, myrrh lilies, and honey describes the power of love as strong as death. And its flame is the sacred flame of the Most High, rising beyond the simple love between man and woman. Throughout history, This book has also been seen as the greatest symbolic portrait of the passionate, faithful, and inseparable love that God has for His people. These 5 books unite into a perfect anatomical map of the human soul. They lead the reader through the deepest reaches of pain, wisdom, and the darkness of meaninglessness before lifting them up again by the power of love. When the inner life has been firmly shaped, that is also the moment when the Bible prepares to open the door into an age of sounds that shake heaven and earth, the thunderous voices of the prophets. The major prophets, the judgment of heaven and the visions that shook empires. When the glory of the royal dynasties faded and the priesthood had completely defiled the holy space of the temple, the patience of heaven officially reached its lowest point. The power systems of human beings had failed miserably to intervene. God ignored the thrones of kings, passed over the ritual altars, and directly raised up His own loudspeakers, the prophets. The major prophets carry an extremely dark and terrifying color, yet they are also magnificently great. They do not only contain fierce warnings of destruction concerning the fall of Jerusalem, but also open visions that reach beyond space and time, foretelling the rise and collapse of global superpowers. The book of Isaiah, the epic of judgment and the Messiah. Standing at the head of this massive body of writing is the book of Isaiah, a work known as the summit of prophetic literature, with a vast vision that covers the entire history of humanity. Isaiah carried out his ministry during the time when the kingdom of Judah stood under the threat of being swallowed by the Assyrian Empire. From chapter 1 to chapter 39. The Sword of Judgment. The first half of the book is a storm of uncompromising wrath. Isaiah exposes the hypocrisy of Jerusalem's elite. They offer expensive sacrifices in the temple, yet their hands are stained with the blood of the poor and the widows. He sends down forceful prophecies of destruction not only against Israel, but also against every brutal empire around them, such as Babylon, Egypt, and Assyria. The earthly world will be plowed up, and human pride will be broken. From chapter 40 to chapter 55. Comfort and the suffering servant. The scene suddenly turns toward the future, looking ahead to the Jewish people exhausted in exile. The voice shifts from wrath to great comfort. Most astonishing are the visions in chapter 53 about a mysterious figure called the suffering servant. Unlike the image of a king holding a sword to crush rebellion, this figure will be despised, pierced for the sins of humanity, and will use his own death to bear the judgment meant for his enemies. From chapter 56 to chapter 66. New heavens and a new earth. The book lifts its vision beyond the borders of the Promised Land and reveals a global future. God declares that He will create new heavens and a new earth, where death, sickness, and tears will be wiped away, and all nations of the world will gather in Jerusalem to worship the Creator. The book of Jeremiah, the cry of the lonely prophet. If Isaiah carries the majestic tone of royalty, then Jeremiah embodies extreme anguish and sorrow. He is called the weeping prophet, bearing a merciless mission to foretell the certain collapse of Jerusalem and to call the people to surrender to the Babylonian Empire so they may live. From chapter 1 to chapter 25, the final warning. Jeremiah continually performs shocking symbolic actions to awaken the crowd. He smashes a clay jar before the leaders to illustrate how God will shatter the kingdom. He stands right at the gate of the temple, points directly at the crowd, and declares that this sacred structure will not protect them if their hearts have rotted. From chapter 26 to chapter 45, rejection and the brutal scene. In return for his warnings, Jeremiah receives extreme hatred. He is beaten, locked in stocks, and thrown into a muddy cistern to wait for death. Throughout these chapters, his inner life breaks apart. He curses the day he was born, yet confesses that the Word of God is like a burning fire shut up in his bones. making it impossible for him to remain silent. In the darkest hour in chapter 31, he announces a great promise: God will establish a new covenant, no longer carved on lifeless stone tablets, but engraved directly into the human heart. From chapter 46 to chapter 52, Judgment against the nations. The book closes by confirming the fall of Jerusalem exactly as foretold, while also pronouncing destruction upon the Babylonian Empire itself, the war machine God had used as an instrument of judgment. The Book of Lamentations, the ashes of the holy city. The Book of Lamentations functions like a haunting sequel to the Book of Jeremiah, setting aside arguments and disputes. This book becomes only the sound of groaning grief. A massive funeral written in 5 poems of extreme mourning upon the ruins of Jerusalem in 586 before Christ. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 4. The horrifying reality. These poems strip bare the severity of the siege. The author describes the once great city now sitting alone like a widow. The famine became so terrible that gentle mothers cooked the flesh of their own children in order to survive. Dead bodies piled up on the street corners, and the steps of the temple burned while stained with the blood of the priests. Chapter 3. The light in the dark night. Right at the center of the book, in the midst of the most suffocating despair, a ray of hope flashes forth. The author remembers the nature of the Most High and cries out, "Because of Jehovah's loving kindness, we are not destroyed. Great is his faithfulness. It is new every morning." Chapter 5. The final plea. The book ends not with deliverance, but with an urgent sigh, begging God to remember their shame and restore the kingdom. The book of Ezekiel, the divine chariot, and the valley of dry bones. While Jeremiah wept in Jerusalem, Ezekiel, a priest, was enduring exile in Babylon. The book of Ezekiel is the most mysterious, terrifying, and intensely visual, almost psychedelic text in the Old Testament. From chapter 1 to chapter 24, the divine chariot leaves the temple. The book opens with a shocking vision. Ezekiel sees the glory of God enthroned upon a massive chariot with wheels covered in fiery eyes, drawn by 4 mysterious living creatures with the face of a man, the face of a lion, the face of an ox, and the face of an eagle. This chariot is not in Jerusalem. It is right there in Babylon. The devastating vision in chapter 10 confirms that because of the filth of the people, the presence of the Most High has officially departed from Solomon's temple, leaving it to be burned by the Babylonians. From chapter 25 to chapter 32, Judgment against foreign nations. Ezekiel turns the sharp point of judgment toward the neighboring nations that rejoiced over Judah's collapse, declaring that the sword of justice will soon find them as well. From chapter 33 to chapter 48, Resurrection. Through the vision of dry bones. When news of Jerusalem's fall reaches Babylon, Ezekiel's message suddenly shifts toward restoration. The cinematic peak of the Bible appears in chapter 37, the vision of the valley of dry bones. Ezekiel stands in a valley filled with decayed white bones, symbolizing the dead nation of Israel. When he speaks prophecy, tens of thousands of bones begin to strike against one another. Grow tendons receive flesh, and the Spirit breathes into them, turning them into a vast army brought back to life. The book closes with a cosmic vision of a new temple, where a river of life flows out from the altar, healing every dead and barren land. The book of Daniel, the beasts and the collapse of empires. Closing the major prophets is the book of Daniel, the book that pushes the setting beyond the borders of Israel and enters the palaces of the strongest superpowers of the ancient world. Daniel is a young man taken captive to Babylon, but through faith and extraordinary wisdom, he rises to become a chief minister under 2 massive empires, Babylon and Persia. From chapter 1 to chapter 6, Faith in the fiery furnace and the lion's den. The first part contains dramatic historical stories of survival. Despite royal prohibitions, Daniel and his 3 friends refuse to bow down to pagan idols. History witnesses terrifying physical miracles. The 3 friends are thrown into a blazing furnace, heated 7 times hotter than normal. Yet they come out without a single hair singed. And Daniel is thrown into a den of hungry lions. But the Spirit of the Most High shuts the mouths of the bloodthirsty beasts. From chapter 7 to chapter 12, visions of the beasts and the end of days. The second half of the book completely transforms into a terrifying apocalyptic text. Daniel sees dreams of 4 hideous beasts rising from the sea, symbolizing 4 empires: Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. They will devastate the earth and trample human beings. However, that frightening vision is crushed by the appearance of the Ancient of Days seated upon a throne of fire. He gives all authority over the universe to a supernatural figure who appears on the clouds called the Son of Man. Daniel gives an absolute affirmation: no matter how powerful and cruel human empires may become, in the end, they will all be crushed into dust, giving way to the eternal kingdom of God. The major prophets close, leaving behind not only a shattering echo of the supreme majesty of heaven, but also the harshest and greatest survival truths for humanity. Through the thunder of Isaiah, the choked tears of Jeremiah, and the space-shaking visions of Ezekiel and Daniel, the first and greatest lesson is expose the illusion of human power. History has proven that every proud throne, every fortified wall, and every massive military empire that claims to be immortal is finally only a fragile illusion. They will crumble into dust when placed on the scales of justice of the Most High. The second lesson is an absolute warning about hypocrisy. The prophets tore open the glittering outer shell of religion and forcefully declared that God detests grand sacrificial rituals if the hands of the worshiper are stained with blood, exploiting the poor and trampling social justice. He demands a truly transformed heart, not a magnificent temple filled with corruption inside. And yet, above every sentence of destruction, the final lesson is an overwhelming hope of restoration. God's judgment has never been meant for eternal destruction. It is the necessary purifying fire that removes the malignant tumor in the suffocating darkness of exile. When every earthly hope had been extinguished, the vision of a valley of dry bones rising back to life, of a new covenant engraved deep within the heart, and of an eternal kingdom that will never be shaken, was planted. That great seed was placed deep into the flow of history, preparing the way for the final echo that would close the entire Old Testament era, the voice of the 12 minor prophets. The final warning, the 12 minor prophets, the symphony of righteousness, and the silence before dawn. After the vast visions of the major prophets came to a close, the Old Testament entered its final stage with a body of writings known as the 12 minor prophets. The word minor here does not mean lesser in authority at all. It simply refers to the shorter length of these books, stretching across more than 3 turbulent centuries from Hosea to Malachi. These 12 books are not disconnected writings. They function like a great symphony, urgent and forceful, bringing down the final indictments of the Most High against corruption, social injustice, and religious decay, before closing the entire Old Testament with a breathless promise about the Messiah. To fully capture the power of this symphony, we will follow the 3 historical waves through which the prophets spoke. The first wave, judgment before the monarchy collapsed. Opening this collection is the book of Hosea, which brings one of the most tragic and painful love stories in the Bible. God commanded Hosea to marry a prostitute named Gomer. Though Gomer repeatedly betrayed him, left home to follow other lovers, and was eventually sold into slavery, Hosea still had to bring money to redeem her and love her again from the beginning. That bone-deep anguish is a raw symbolic portrait. God is playing the role of the faithful husband, bitterly watching the nation of Israel. His covenant wife repeatedly commits spiritual adultery by worshiping bloody false gods. Following the pain of Hosea, the book of Joel uses the image of a horrifying physical disaster, a plague of locusts sweeping away every crop, to sound the alarm about the day of Jehovah, the fierce day of judgment that is drawing near. While Joel warns about natural disaster, the book of Amos roars like an enraged lion before the rottenness of society. Amos was only a simple shepherd, yet he tore open the hypocritical covering of the elite. His prophecy is a fatal blow. God detests their hymns and their grand religious festivals because outside the temple they are trampling the poor, exploiting the weak, and bending justice for bribes. With that same pulse of anger, the book of Obadiah delivers a lightning-fast sentence of destruction against the kingdom of Edom because of its extreme pride and its crime of helping trample its brother Israel in a time of disaster. Then the rhythm suddenly turns in a dramatic direction with the book of Jonah. This is the only prophet who dared to run away from the command of the Most High. Swallowed by a great fish and later forced to warn the wicked city of Nineveh, Jonah witnessed an unexpected miracle. The entire enemy city, from the king to the people, repented, and God withdrew his wrath. The book of Jonah is not only a story about a fish. It is a slap against human narrowness, affirming that the love and forgiveness of the Creator extend over all nations, even the most brutal enemies. Ending the first wave is the book of Micah. He gathers together the full corruption of the leaders and gives one supreme demand that summarizes the entire law. O man, he has shown you what is good, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. In particular, Micah lights a brilliant ray of hope by naming the exact place the great Messiah would not come from the splendid capital, but would be born in Bethlehem, a small and unknown village. The second wave shattered empires and the questioning of heaven. As the moment of Israel's collapse drew very near, the book of Nahum sounded like a forceful death sentence. In complete contrast to the forgiveness in the book of Jonah, Nahum proclaims the permanent destruction of Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. The patience of heaven had run out, and the brutal empire that had crushed so many nations would now be completely erased by blood and fire. In the midst of rising global violence, the book of Habakkuk brings an inner dialogue filled with philosophical weight. Habakkuk does not shout at the people. Instead, he turns and argues directly with God. Why would he use an evil empire like Babylon to punish his own people? The answer of the Most High became one of the greatest truths shaping faith. Proud empires will eventually destroy one another, but the righteous shall live by faith. Echoing that warning, the book of Zephaniah paints a terrifying apocalyptic vision. The day of the Lord will not fall only upon Israel, but will come like a fire, sweeping away all filth from the earth, reversing the process of creation itself. Yet among the ashes, God will purify and preserve a humble and faithful remnant to begin a new era. The third wave, the return, the apathy, and the end of an age. When the Jewish survivors returned to Jerusalem after 70 years of exile in Babylon, the symphony entered its final rhythm. At this time, the initial excitement had given way to apathy. The people were busy building luxurious paneled houses for themselves while leaving the foundation of God's temple in ruins. Before that indifference, the book of Haggai rose up with a decisive call to awaken them. He warned that their economy was failing precisely because they had placed their priorities in the wrong order, and he encouraged them to begin rebuilding the Holy Temple. Standing shoulder to shoulder with Haggai, the book of Zechariah brings mystical visions to strengthen the courage of the builders. Even more than that, Zechariah reveals chillingly sharp images of the future king. A humble king would enter Jerusalem riding on a young donkey. Yet at the same time, he would be betrayed for only 30 pieces of silver, and they will look upon the one whom they have pierced. Finally, the great symphony of the 12 prophets closes with a cold final note from the book of Malachi. Although the temple had been rebuilt, the hearts of the priests had become rotten just like their ancestors. They despised the altar of the Most High by offering blind, lame, and sick animals. With a tone both ironic and forceful, God declared that He would rather shut the doors of the temple than accept those false offerings. However, the final sentence of the Old Testament does not sink into darkness. Malachi's last prophecy announces a great flash of hope. God will send a messenger with the spirit of the great prophet Elijah to prepare the way before the glorious and terrifying day of the Lord appears. As soon as the word of Malachi ends, the curtain of history suddenly falls. No prophet speaks again. No vision descends again. The entire Old Testament sinks into a deep, still, and breathless silence, lasting 400 years. Those 4 silent centuries were not forgetfulness. They were the moment when the universe held its breath while empires rose and fell, arranging the perfect stage for the most earth-shaking appearance in all of human history. The birth of the Savior Jesus, officially opening the era of the New Testament. The New Testament, the appearance of the Messiah. 4 centuries of absolute silence had passed. The stage curtain of the ancient world had now been perfectly arranged under the iron-fisted rule of the Roman Empire. In the midst of that suffocating oppression, the silence of the Old Testament was suddenly torn open, not by thunder, nor by the appearance of an army from heaven, but by the cry of a newborn child in an unknown stable and manger in Bethlehem. The Savior Jesus was born, officially activating the era of the New Testament. Following the flow of history, the New Testament is a body of writings containing a total of 27 books written in Common Greek, Koine Greek, within a period of less than 1 century. If the Old Testament is a tragic epic stretching across thousands of years about the formation and collapse of a nation, then the New Testament is the ignition point of a lightning-fast spiritual revolution, sweeping across every border and reshaping the entire civilization of humanity. This legacy of 27 books is organized into 4 tightly connected sections, beginning with the records of the life of the Savior, the Gospels, continuing with the explosive rise of the first believers, the book of Acts, then moving into the profound philosophical and theological foundation sent to the communities, the Epistles, and finally closing with a vision of the end times that shakes the universe, the book of Revelation. And to begin this great structure, the Bible needed a solid foundation. To record the life, mission, bloody death, and earth-shaking resurrection of the greatest figure in human history, the Bible does not use a single biography. Instead, the opening body of the New Testament gives us the 4 Gospels. The word gospel means good news. These 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, function like 4 cinematic camera angles placed in 4 different positions, all focusing on one single center, Jesus. Each author has a distinct target audience and a deeply sharp theological purpose. Together, they interweave to create the most multidimensional, complete, and powerful portrait of the Most High in human form. The Gospel of Matthew, the King of the Promise. The first camera angle is placed through the lens of Matthew, a former tax collector once despised by Jewish society. This book was written especially for a Jewish audience with one forceful purpose: to prove that Jesus is the rightful king from the line of David the Messiah, foretold by the prophets of the Old Testament. From chapter 1 to chapter 4, the royal origin and the beginning of the mission. From the very first chapter, Matthew strikes the reader's mind with a massive genealogy connecting the bloodline of Jesus to the patriarch Abraham and King David. Throughout these chapters, from the birth event to the flight into Egypt to his baptism, the author continually uses the phrase, "This happened to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet." He overcame the temptation of the devil in the wilderness, the very place where the nation of Israel had once failed. From chapter 5 to chapter 7, the constitution of the kingdom, Matthew portrays Jesus as a new Moses and greater than Moses. If Moses once went up Mount Sinai to receive the law on stone tablets, then Jesus steps onto the mountain to directly proclaim a new constitution for the kingdom of heaven through the famous Sermon on the Mount. He overturns every earthly value. Blessed are the poor, those who mourn, and those who are persecuted. From chapter 8 to chapter 25, authority and confrontation. The scene expands with a series of miracles and teachings through parables. Matthew does not only portray a great teacher, but a king who holds all authority. His rise immediately collides fiercely with the corrupt religious leaders of that time, the Pharisees. The tension escalates to its peak when Jesus directly pronounces 7 forceful woes against their hypocrisy in chapter 23. From chapter 26 to chapter 28, the cross and the crown. The book closes with the passion, the death, and the earth-shaking resurrection. The king is crucified, but death cannot hold him. In the final lines, the risen one gives the Great Commission, empowering his disciples to go and make disciples of all nations in the world. When Matthew closes with an authoritative declaration of kingship, the Bible immediately changes scenes. Setting aside the massive speeches and ancient genealogies, the second camera angle forces the viewer to hold their breath before a pace so urgent it feels dizzying. Second is the Gospel of Mark. Written mainly for a Roman audience, people who valued power practicality and cared little about genealogy or ancient Jewish philosophy. Mark completely removes the account of Jesus' birth and childhood. From chapter 1 to chapter 8, lightning-fast power, the book rushes straight into miracles, the authority to cast out demons, and fierce confrontations from the very first lines. The most haunting key word appearing again and again in the Gospel of Mark is immediately. There are no lengthy sermons. Jesus, through Mark's camera angle, moves without rest from city to village. He seizes authority over nature when he calms the storm and he breaks every shackle of demonic power. The first half of the book ends with a historic turning point when Peter confesses him as the Christ. From chapter 9 to chapter 16, the journey of the suffering servant. As soon as his identity is confirmed, Jesus immediately foretells his death, leaving the disciples stunned. In this camera angle, he is the embodiment of the suffering servant mentioned by the prophet Isaiah. He does not demand to be served, but uses action to prove divine authority, reaching the climax, when he voluntarily gives himself as a ransom for many. The passion unfolds swiftly, brutally, and closes with the empty tomb, leaving those who witnessed it in absolute astonishment. After the urgent and breathless action footage of Mark, the third camera angle slows down, becoming extremely detailed, gentle, and warm under the pen of a physician. Third is the Gospel of Luke. Luke was a gentle physician, not a Jew, and an extremely careful historian. His book is aimed at a Greek audience and all humanity with the purpose of proving the absolute reliability of the historical events through investigation and interviews with eyewitnesses. Luke gives us a deeply human and profound portrait of the Son of Man. From chapter 1 to chapter 3, the epic of the lowly Luke is the only one who records in detail the birth of John the Baptist and the pregnancy of Mary. Notably, the news of the birth of the Savior is not announced to kings or rulers, but is sung by angels to poor shepherds out in the fields, those at the bottom of society at that time. From chapter 4 to chapter 9, the mission of mercy. While kingdoms cared only about the elite, Luke's Jesus gives special attention to lives discarded by society. The book is filled with scenes where he breaks every forbidden barrier. He touches and heals unclean lepers, protects vulnerable women, and eats with tax collectors who were regarded as traitors. From chapter 10 to chapter 19, the journey to Jerusalem and the great parables. Throughout the final journey toward the capital, Luke records the most classic parables about the endless mercy of heaven. especially the Good Samaritan and the prodigal son. From chapter 20 to chapter 24, the innocent sacrifice and the global promise. When he is hanging on the cross, the merciful portrait of Jesus reaches its peak as he speaks forgiveness over the very people crucifying him. Luke affirms a global message: salvation is not the privilege of one nation or one social class, but a wide open door for all humanity. The first three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are often called the Synoptic Gospels because they share many common viewpoints and historical structures. But when the narrative turns to the fourth book, space and time are suddenly shattered completely. The Gospel of John the Great, word from eternity. The Gospel of John is like an eagle spreading its wings and soaring into the sky beyond every limit of history. John does not begin the story at the manger in Bethlehem, nor does he begin with the genealogy of David. He pulls the camera angle all the way back to the beginning of the universe. Chapter 1, the mystical prelude. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. This is the most deeply theological and philosophically profound book. The focus of John is not only what Jesus does, but who he truly is. From chapter 2 to chapter 12, the Book of Signs. Pulling back the veil of mystery completely. John structures this section around 7 core miracles, from turning water into wine to calling Lazarus back from the dead, combined with 7 resounding "I am" declarations. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the resurrection and the life. The author forcefully affirms that this carpenter from Nazareth is the Creator walking on the earth. From chapter 13 to chapter 17, the upper room and the priestly prayer. The atmosphere grows quiet before the hour of the Passion. Jesus washes the feet of his disciples with his own hands, gives them a new commandment of love, and lifts up to the Most High the greatest prayer to protect those who follow him. From chapter 18 to chapter 21, the throne on the cross. If the previous 3 books focus on portraying the extreme pain of the road to Golgotha, then the Gospel of John presents a passion in which Jesus remains in absolute control. He is not killed. He voluntarily gives up his life. John turns the cross from a brutal defeat into a glorious throne. With the cry, "It is finished," God closes the blood-sealed covenant to bring eternal life to anyone who dares to place complete faith in him. 4 portraits, the King of the Promise, the servant in action, the merciful Savior, and the eternal Word come together into one perfect cube. They do not cancel one another out. They interweave to create an indestructible image of Jesus. When the empty tomb is confirmed and he ascends to heaven, the group of Gospels comes to a close. The mission of the Savior on earth has been completed. He officially passes the torch to his small disciples. A storm of fire from the Holy Spirit is about to descend, beginning a spiritual revolution that will shake and reshape the entire ancient world in the next book. The Book of Acts, the first age of the global church. Contained within a single work, the Book of Acts, or the Acts of the Apostles. This historical section serves as the solid bridge connecting the life of Jesus with the era of the church. Through the careful record of Dr. Luke, the book tells how the message of the gospel spread from a small group in Jerusalem and rose into a movement that changed the entire world. The story closely follows the footsteps of 2 central figures, Peter and Paul, dividing this whole historical journey into 4 radiant stages of growth. From chapter 1 to chapter 7, the fire in Jerusalem. The work begins with a shocking event on the day of Pentecost. The disciples were gathered in prayer inside a room. The Holy Spirit descended with the image of tongues of fire and the sound of a mighty rushing wind. Divine power completely transformed people who had once hidden from the crowds into courageous warriors. Peter boldly stood up and preached, drawing thousands of people into the community of faith in a single day. From this point, the first church was formed in Jerusalem. The milestone marking the next transformation was the heroic sacrifice of Stephen. This event functioned like a whirlwind, scattering the believers everywhere and carrying the message of salvation even farther. From chapter 8 to chapter 12, expanding the boundaries and the event at Damascus. The message moved beyond the geographic boundary of Jerusalem, reaching Samaria and the region of Judea. This stage records a turning point event, the transformation of Saul. From the position of a man who hunted down believers, Saul saw a majestic vision of Jesus on the road to Damascus. That powerful vision transformed him into Paul, the great apostle of all time. At the same time, Peter brought the message to Cornelius, a high-ranking Roman officer. This section confirms that the message of salvation is for every nation across the entire world. From chapter 13 to chapter 20, Paul's historic journeys. The focus of the story shifts completely to Paul and his 3 large-scale missionary journeys. Paul and his companions crossed vast territories of the Roman Empire from Asia Minor all the way to the region of Greece. He set foot in bustling centers of economy and culture such as Ephesus, Corinth, and pressed straight into the philosophical center of Athens. At every destination, Paul debated, preached, and established strong church communities. Throughout the journey, he endured countless severe trials, yet always continued forward with steadfastness, proving the absolute power of faith. From chapter 21 to chapter 28, moving straight into the center of power, Rome. The final part of the work is the journey toward the highest center of power in the ancient world, the capital city of Rome. Paul returned to Jerusalem, experienced arrest, and stood before the courts of Roman governors and kings. Using his Roman citizenship, Paul appealed for the emperor himself to judge his case. The sea voyage to Rome unfolded with great drama, including a violent storm that wrecked the ship. After overcoming every danger, Paul arrived safely in Rome. The book closes with the image of Paul living under house arrest, yet still freely and powerfully preaching the message of the kingdom of heaven to all who came to visit him. The book of Acts ends open-ended, passing the mission of evangelism to the generations that follow. The message had taken deep root in the capital of the Roman Empire, preparing a firm foundation for Paul's deeply philosophical letters to be sent out in the next section of books. As this heroic chapter of history comes to a close, the book leaves humanity with 3 core lessons, profound, practical, and deeply relevant. First, the greatest power always comes from the Holy Spirit. The transformation of the disciples was a true miracle. From weak and fearful men, they were changed into courageous messengers, ready to face swords, persecution, and royal authority. This story clearly proves that when human beings fully surrender themselves to the Creator, they receive extraordinary strength to carry out missions that can change the world. Second, adversity becomes the stepping stone for growth. Every time the believers faced trials, expulsion, or harsh court hearings, the gospel movement grew even stronger. Instead of shrinking back, the faithful carried the seeds of faith across many lands and planted them in new territories. In the end, every act of persecution became a catalyst, pushing the message of salvation 1,000 times farther. Third, love and salvation break down every barrier. The fact that the gospel moved beyond the narrow boundaries of Jerusalem and reached the Romans, the Greeks, and every other nation affirmed the unconditional love of God. Ethnic, social, and cultural divisions were completely broken. The message of the Most High brings absolute equality, opening its arms to welcome all humanity. These lessons, written in blood and tears, forged a resilient spirit of martyrdom and prepared the believers with a firm heart for the coming age of sharp and profound theological epistles. The Epistles of Paul, the philosophical foundation and practical lessons for life. After the gospel movement exploded across the Roman Empire, the communities of believers needed a firm foundation of thought to guide their daily lives. This group of 13 books, beginning with the book of Romans and extending to the book of Philemon, shares one very clear feature: an extremely high level of practical application. Moving beyond the form of historical storytelling, these letters directly address real-life issues and build a standard system of thought for the communities. The author of all 13 books is the Apostle Paul. From a man who once fiercely hunted down the followers of Christ, he went through an extremely powerful spiritual transformation on the road to Damascus and became the greatest missionary in history. He wrote these letters directly to church communities in major cities, or to individuals in order to resolve internal crises, correct errors, and shape the most essential doctrines concerning grace, faith, and justification. To bring these philosophies into everyday life, the 13 books are connected into one great and continuous stream of thought. The journey begins with the book of Romans, often compared to the constitution of faith. This is the most massive and foundational epistle of the entire New Testament. Paul carefully explains how human beings receive salvation through the grace of God, rising above reliance on personal effort or rigid rules. The book affirms that everyone carries sin and that all are welcomed into forgiveness through faith in Jesus. Moving from doctrine into real life, the book of Romans reminds each person to lay aside pride. When we realize that we are fully loved by grace, we learn how to show patience and value the people around us. After building a firm doctrinal foundation in Romans, Paul rolls up his sleeves and steps directly into resolving a tangled mess in the city of Corinth through the books of 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. At that time, the community of believers there was caught in all kinds of everyday conflicts. These two letters are exactly like the sincere and direct counsel of a father to his family. Paul goes deep into every corner of practical life, calming divisions and factions, correcting loose habits of living, and guiding them toward proper conduct. He encourages everyone to use their special gifts to serve those around them, yielding to one another in order to build a strong community together. The heart of this entire message is found in chapter 13 of the first letter, a beautiful love song about true love and the power of humility. Living in a society that is always rushing to compete, where everyone wants to display personal achievement and claim victory for themselves, Paul offers an extremely precious medicine of healing. He affirms that love, patience, and understanding are the only bridge strong enough to mend every fracture. To preserve family happiness and unity within the community, we must learn to lower the ego and place sincerity in the highest position. Together with correcting morality, Paul continues to stand up in defense of the believer's freedom through the book of Galatians. This letter carries Paul's strongest and most determined tone, functioning like a declaration of freedom. The author leads believers beyond ideas that force them to observe old traditional rituals in order to receive salvation. He affirms complete freedom in Christ and calls everyone to live under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. The letter encourages us to live a light and joyful life, completely removing the pressure to perform in order to satisfy the judgmental standards of others. The steadfastness of faith continued to be tested when Paul fell into imprisonment. Right inside those suffocating four walls, he wrote some of his most beautiful and life-filled lines through the books of Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians. These three books offer deeply personal words that readers can apply immediately to everyday living. Beginning with the book of Ephesians, Paul paints a beautiful picture of unity. In the first half of the letter, he speaks of the great love of the Creator, who gathers all people from every class into one great family. Moving into the second half, he carefully gives extremely practical counsel for every home. He guides husbands and wives in how to honor and yield to one another. He teaches children how to respect their parents. To protect that home, he encourages everyone to put on spiritual armor, such as truth, peace, and firm faith, in order to overcome every temptation lurking in society. Moving to the book of Philippians, we enter the book of overwhelming joy. Although his hands are in chains, Paul continually speaks words that encourage everyone to keep smiling and hold on to an optimistic spirit. He takes the ultimate humility of Jesus himself as a perfect example, urging us to lower the ego and learn how to lift up the person beside us. Paul also shares the secret of his own life, finding contentment in every circumstance. Whether in abundance or hardship, he still feels complete peace through the strength given by the Creator. At the same time, the book of Colossians focuses on honoring the supreme position of Jesus. At that moment, the community of believers was confused by many distant philosophies and strict regulations. To untangle the confusion, Paul gently pulls their attention back to the most essential foundation. He affirms that Jesus is the center of all things and the source of all wisdom. Holding firmly to that foundation, he encourages everyone to root themselves deeply in love, to nurture a gentle and compassionate character, and to be ready to forgive one another. These 3 letters are living proof that peace always begins with a steady mind. When we know how to master our inner life, we can preserve complete joy and rise with dignity above every ordinary hardship of life. Amid the burdens and weariness of daily life, communities of believers often carried many worries about the future. To soothe those anxieties, Paul gives an extremely clear direction through the books of 1 Thessalonians and 2 Thessalonians. These 2 letters are like a caring word of encouragement, while also answering practical questions in detail about the time when Jesus will return. In the first letter, Paul gives much praise for the love and unity of the people. At that time, some members were grieving because they had lost loved ones, and they were troubled about the fate of those who had died. Paul immediately calms their minds with a certain promise: on the day Jesus returns, those who have fallen asleep will also be given eternal life. He encourages the community to remain at peace, maintain a clean way of life, focus on caring for their families, and work diligently each day with their own hands. Moving into the second letter, Paul corrects a very troublesome misunderstanding. Some people in the community were spreading rumors that the moment of the Lord's return was already taking place. As a result, they neglected their work, simply sat around waiting, and interfered in other people's affairs. Paul instructs them to set aside this lazy attitude. He tells everyone to continue working diligently, provide for their own meals, and maintain an orderly life. He affirms that the great moment will come according to heaven's plan, while our task in the present is to fully complete the responsibility of being human. The lesson drawn from these 2 books centers completely on balance. Nurturing hope for a better tomorrow must always go together with effort in the present. We place our trust in the future while still giving our full devotion to our work, loving those around us, and fulfilling every duty well at this present moment. When Paul sensed that the journey of his dedication was nearing completion, he carefully passed the responsibility to the next generation through the books of 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, and Titus. These are personal letters sent to 2 outstanding students, functioning like a handbook on how to train successors. Paul thoroughly passes on his experience in managing communities and in recognizing and choosing leaders of proper character. He instructs his students to preserve sound teaching fully and pass it on to the generations that follow. For believers today, this counsel has extremely close practical value in raising children or managing people at work. A leader or a capable parent always needs to build an exemplary way of life, matching words with actions in order to create a firm support for those who come after to follow. From broad and large-scale issues, Paul narrows the camera angle into an extremely moving personal story through the book of Philemon, bringing a turning point that changes the entire social system. This is a letter containing a sincere appeal of brotherly love. Paul hopes that a master will forgive and receive back a slave who once left. He urges the master to use love and open his arms to receive that man as a beloved brother sharing the same faith. The letter affirms that true faith always reconciles every boundary of class or status. This story reminds us today of the power of forgiveness. Human compassion and forgiveness always create wondrous miracles, rising above every legal rule or harsh social prejudice. As these 13 historic letters come to a close, we can draw precious lessons that apply directly to real life. The first lesson affirms that grace is always greater than personal effort. Forgiveness and salvation are completely free gifts from the Creator, given to everyone willing to receive them by faith. When we understand this, we are released from the pressure of having to prove our own perfection through outward rituals, and we can fully enjoy a life of peace and lightness. The next lesson honors love as the highest standard. All knowledge, talents, and personal achievements reach their greatest value when joined with patience and compassion. Communities and families today always become stronger through unity, mutual respect, and a heart that is always ready to forgive. Finally, peace is always present, even in the midst of countless hardships. Through his own experience of writing letters from prison, Paul proves that true joy comes from a steady inner life. In a world that is always rushing and filled with worries, maintaining a quiet heart helps us rise with courage above every trial and preserve a joyful smile in daily life. The General Epistles, the power of true faith. The General Epistles bring a powerful source of strength for refining faith, consisting of 8 books, stretching from the book of Hebrews to the book of Jude. The authors of these writings include the pillars of the first church, such as Peter, John, James, and Jude, along with the anonymous writer of Hebrews. Moving beyond narrow geographic boundaries, this collection enters every corner of daily life, becoming a practical survival handbook for the soul. Placed within the historical context of that time, those who carried faith within them had to face countless brutal persecutions from the Roman authorities. Day after day, they endured the lashes of whips, witnessed families torn apart, and were pushed to the fragile line between life and death. In the midst of those extreme trials, these 8 letters offered a warm embrace of comfort, soothing countless wounds of the body. Every sentence poured a powerful source of strength into the human heart, forging faith until it became firm and steady like stone. The apostles gently guided the community to maintain a pure and holy way of life amid countless hardships, more than a religious document. This handbook gave them extraordinary courage, helping each believer step through bone-deep pain, lift their head with dignity, and smile before the hour of martyrdom, with a heart full of peace and calm. Opening this body of writings is the book of Hebrews, a theological masterpiece focused on honoring the supreme position of Jesus. The author wrote this letter to encourage Jewish believers who were under pressure and wanted to return to the old rituals. With extremely sharp reasoning, the letter proves that Jesus is greater than the angels, greater than the leader Moses, and that his sacrifice carries complete value beyond every traditional offering. The practical lesson of this book urges us to keep our eyes fixed forward, hold tightly to hope, and continue running on the path of righteousness with extraordinary endurance. Moving from vast theological ideas into everyday actions, the book of James offers very practical counsel. The author James examines faith through concrete works. He guides us in how to control our words, how to extend our hands to help the weak, and how to keep a generous heart. The book affirms that living faith always reveals itself through beautiful actions. This reminds believers today to turn prayers into practical deeds and to treat everyone around them with love. Along with moral refinement, the community needed a firm support to face persecution, and the book of 1 Peter fully meets that need. The Apostle Peter wrote this letter to comfort those suffering under fierce persecution. He guides them to see trials as an opportunity for refinement, helping the soul become brighter and purer. This counsel is extremely useful for life today, helping us maintain optimism and find deep meaning even in the most difficult circumstances. As his journey of devotion on earth was preparing to close, the Apostle Peter poured his final passion into writing the book of 2 Peter. This letter carries the full warmth of a gentle father preserving his most heartfelt final words before he reached the destination of his life. If in the first letter he used love to support people through pressure from the outside, then in this letter he turns his attention toward keeping the community safe from dangers growing from within. At that time, certain individuals inside the community were spreading false information and twisting the truth. To protect his brothers and sisters, Peter gently urged every believer to actively cultivate understanding. He told them to root themselves deeply in sound teaching and nurture patient endurance as they waited for the day Jesus would return according to heaven's promise. From those ancient pages, the letter brings a deeply vivid lesson for our lives today. Living in an age of exploding information and countless deceptive invitations, Peter's counsel reminds each person to equip themselves with a firm foundation of knowledge. By maintaining alertness and cultivating wisdom each day, we build for ourselves a shield of peace, preserving our faith and the right direction amid countless streams of information in modern society. Continuing the journey of nurturing the soul. The Apostle John brings the book of 1 John with the warm and affectionate voice of a gentle father. By this time, the apostle had grown old, and he sends this letter like an embrace wrapped around the community of believers. The book is a beautiful love song, strongly affirming that the nature of the Creator is pure love. John gently guides believers in how to nurture a clear heart, cherish one another, and remain closely connected with the brothers and sisters around them. This heartfelt message urges each person to actively build a united home where love becomes the only language used to comfort and heal every wound in daily life. Keeping that same overflowing emotional current, he gently moves into the book of 2 John, a short yet deeply distilled letter sent to a local community. Here the apostle skillfully blends two extremely important elements, compassion and truth. He offers sincere praise for their wonderful spirit of hospitality. At the same time, he carefully reminds everyone to know how to place kindness in the right hands. He advises them to use discernment to recognize and give full support to messengers who carry sound teaching. The practical lesson of this letter encourages us today to always keep a generous and open heart together with a clear and thoughtful mind in order to protect ourselves and the community. Narrowing the camera angle from a community down to one outstanding individual, the book of 3 John brings a very vivid practical story. This time the Apostle John writes a handwritten letter personally to Gaius, a brother with a warm spirit of hospitality and a precious, generous heart. The apostle offers deep praise to Gaius because he devoted himself to caring for traveling believers. Alongside that, by correcting the arrogant attitude of another leader, the Apostle John gives a costly lesson about humility. This story affirms the core value of a true leader. To stand in a position of guidance, we need to keep a devoted servant's heart always ready to support, listen, and give absolute respect to those walking alongside us. Closing the general epistles is the book of Jude, a ringing alarm bell like a forceful reminder sent to every generation. The author Jude does not move into distant theories, but directly urges believers to devote all their strength to protecting the precious treasure of faith against the invasion of distorted ideas and people with corrupt lifestyles. The letter sends out a flame of courage, urging the community to build for itself a firm foundation of spiritual life, always maintain a close connection through prayer, and remain ready to open its arms, to lift up and rescue those who are going astray. Jude's heartfelt instruction creates a great inner strength, helping each person stand firm, remain faithful to the path they have chosen, and fully enjoy peace within their own faith, amid a society filled with constant change. Looking at the whole picture, these 8 general epistles are like perfect pieces forming a wonderful survival handbook for life today. They are not only ancient sacred writings, but living lessons blending together into a great source of strength. From training endurance to withstand every hardship, to practicing love through concrete actions each day, to maintaining courage in order to protect the truth. All of it is gathered into a path of growth for each person. These writings are like a trusted companion, walking with believers today and helping us move forward with confidence through every ordinary hardship. Through them, each person can nurture a pure heart, learn how to set aside small anxieties, and enjoy a complete life filled with joy and meaning in every breath. Now, as the foundation has been firmly established through the Gospels, the history of the Church's formation has been recorded, and the teachings about life have been shaped. We are ready to enter the final chapter of the entire New Testament. Together, we will lift the great veil over the future, where every truth is revealed and human history finds its final destination in the book of Revelation. Are you ready to explore this extraordinary book with me? The Book of Revelation, Prophecy and the Final Warnings for Humanity. The Book of Revelation is the final book of the Bible and also the final prophetic text revealed by Jesus to humanity, written around the years 90 to 96 after Christ. The author of the book is the Apostle John, the disciple whom Jesus loved and also the last surviving apostle when this book was written. When he was young, John was only a boy who worked as a fisherman beside the Sea of Galilee. His father expected him to continue the family trade. No one imagined that this young man would become the one to record the final visions of heaven. And yet, when Jesus stepped onto the shore of the lake and called his name, John's entire life was set apart for the Lord. From that moment on, he followed the teacher like a son following his father, quiet, faithful, and always walking close behind. John was the one who leaned against the chest of Jesus at the Last Supper. He was the one who stood at the foot of the cross when the whole world turned its back on him. He was the only one among the disciples who did not run away. And he was also the one Jesus trusted and entrusted with the care of his mother. The Lord looked at him with gentle eyes and entrusted his mother to his care, as if saying, "I trust you. I know you will be faithful to the end." And that is exactly what happened. John lived longer than all the other apostles. He watched them one by one being killed, executed, crucified, and burned alive, but he never abandoned the faith. He went from city to city, strengthening the young churches, writing the gospel, and 3 epistles teaching the children of God to stand firm in the storm. But that faithfulness also made him an enemy of the Roman Empire. They could not silence him with threats, so they exiled him to a desolate place, an island almost forgotten in the Aegean Sea. The island of Patmos, a place of sharp rocks, cold winds, and long nights with no one to speak to. A place where people wanted him to slowly die in loneliness. But in the very place the world thought was the end, John saw Christ in glory with his own eyes, and he heard the secret revelations from him with his own ears. Afterward, John wrote everything down in the final book of the Bible, the book that 2,000 years later still makes all humanity tremble whenever its name is mentioned. The Book of Revelation. What makes Revelation special is not only its prophetic content, but also its sacred origin. This is the only book in the Bible in which Jesus directly commands a human being to write it down, with every sentence and every word tied to his command. Write the things which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. Across 2 millennia, the Book of Revelation has played an extremely important role in the Christian church. It is the book that gives a complete explanation of humanity's final day, the second coming of Jesus, the final battle between good and evil, the judgment and the new heaven and new earth. So, even an ordinary person can still learn many things from the Book of Revelation. Opening this journey in chapter 1, John sees the resurrected Jesus standing among 7 golden lampstands, the symbol of the churches. He stands in the midst of the community with radiant majesty, affirming his sovereign rule over the church, even when it is weak or persecuted. That presence leads us into chapter 2, where the Lord sends words of examination to the first 4 churches. Here he both praises their perseverance under external pressures, such as violence and false teaching, and directly warns them about the cracks forming inside as they begin compromising with the world or losing their first love. Chapter 3 continues with the remaining 3 churches. Sardis has a reputation for being alive, but inside it is dying. This is the image of a community that still has reputation and activity, but whose spiritual life is almost extinguished. Philadelphia is the small but faithful church. They have little strength, yet they keep the word of the Lord, and he places before them an open door. In complete contrast, Laodicea is a wealthy, confident, comfortable church, yet spiritually poor and called lukewarm. This city was famous for banking black wool and eye medicine. So the word of the Lord strikes directly at their pride. They think they are rich, but before the Lord they need true gold, white garments, and spiritual eye salve. Chapter 4 lifts John from the earth up into heaven through an open door and the call, "Come up here." Before his eyes is the throne of God, surrounded by 24 elders, 4 living creatures, flashes of lightning, 7 lamps of fire, and a sea as clear as crystal. The 4 living creatures continually proclaim, "Holy, holy, holy," while the 24 elders fall down in worship, declaring that God is worthy to receive glory because he created all things. This chapter is the foundation of the entire book. Before Revelation speaks of war disasters, the beast Babylon, and judgment, it shows the reader the throne of God. In particular, the number 24 is often understood as an image of the complete people of God, the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles, showing that the worship around the throne includes the entire covenant people of God. Chapter 5 continues the scene of the heavenly throne, when in the right hand of the one seated on the throne, there is a scroll sealed with 7 seals. John weeps loudly because no one is worthy to open the scroll until one of the elders says to him, "The Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has conquered." Yet when John looks, he sees a lamb as though it had been slain. This is one of the deepest moments in Revelation. The one announced as the lion appears as the lamb, affirming that the victory of Jesus comes through sacrifice. He is able to open the scroll because he was slain and by his blood redeemed people from every nation. Or to say it in a simple way, Jesus used his own life to redeem all human wrongs and rescue people from destruction. The most terrifying developments unfold in chapter 6. Chapter 6 opens the first series of judgments through the 7 seals. The first 4 seals bring forth the 4 horsemen, the white horse conquest, the red horse war, the black horse famine, and the pale horse death. These 4 horsemen show a world shaken by pains that have accompanied humanity across many ages. Next, the 5th seal opens the scene of the souls of martyrs crying out for God to judge with justice, while the 6th seal shakes the universe with an earthquake, the darkening of the sun and the moon becoming like blood, causing every class of people to tremble before the wrath of the Lamb. Moving into chapter 7, the stream of judgment pauses to answer the question of who can stand firm. John sees 144,000 people sealed from the tribes of Israel. And afterward he sees an innumerable multitude from every nation, every people in every language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, wearing white robes and holding palm branches. The number 144,000 is a powerful symbol describing the people of God, marked in completeness, while the innumerable multitude shows that salvation reaches beyond the borders of Israel. When the 7th seal is opened, all heaven falls into an eerie silence for about half an hour, like a breath held still before the storm of judgment descends. And immediately after that, the sky breaks open in terror as 7 angels receive 7 trumpets. An angel offers incense together with the urgent prayers of the saints before the throne. Then fire from the altar is thrown down to the earth, opening the first 4 trumpets that strike nature, the land, the sea, the rivers and springs, and even the sun and moon come under judgment. The striking mystery here is the link between the cry for help from the persecuted righteous and the wrath from above. It affirms that your cries always reach the court of the Creator. From the shaking of nature, the nightmare becomes even more extreme when chapter 9 opens with the two most terrifying trumpets. The fifth trumpet summons a strange swarm of locusts from the abyss, led by the destroyer Abaddon or Apollyon, to torment those who do not carry the seal of God. Then the sixth trumpet releases 4 angels bound at the Euphrates River, unleashing a massive cavalry army that kills 1/3 of humanity. The mystery lies in the imprisonment in the abyss and the boundary of the Euphrates, a place once tied to empires that threatened the people of God, showing that every chaotic power remains in His hands. And yet, the most heartbreaking thing is humanity's stubbornness. Even while disasters surround them, they remain immersed in idol worship, murder, and sexual immorality. In the midst of that panic, John suddenly faces a magnificent scene. A mighty angel descends from heaven, planting his feet on the sea and the land and roaring like a lion. When the 7 thunders sound, John is commanded to seal them up, but he must eat a little scroll in his mouth. It is sweet as honey, but in his stomach, it becomes bitter. The mystery of the scroll is the nature of prophecy itself. The Word of God is sweet with truth, but also bitter because of the burden of judgment and the pain of bearing witness in a world that resists Him. The curtain of history does not stop there, but continues to lift over the fierce scenes of chapter 11, where the temple is measured as a sign of protection and the 2 witnesses, like 2 lampstands, standing before the Lord, begin their testimony with authority, shutting the sky and turning water into blood. But when they complete their witness, the beast from the abyss rises and kills them. Yet after 3.5 days, they stand up and are taken into heaven in glory. When the 7th trumpet sounds, the kingdom of the world officially becomes the kingdom of the Lord. The great mystery is the image of Moses and Elijah, reflected through the 2 witnesses, affirming that even when the testimony of God's people is attacked, the power of resurrection still belongs to the Most High. That war is not limited to the earth. It also erupts fiercely in heaven when chapter 12 opens with the scene of the woman clothed with the sun crying out in labor, while the red dragon waits to devour her child. The child is caught up while the woman flees into the wilderness. War breaks out. Michael and his angels defeat Satan, casting the deceiver down to the earth. The woman is connected to the people of God who bring forth the Messiah, while the dragon is Satan, standing behind the hostility against Christ. The war on earth is truly a spiritual war, where the church overcomes by the blood of the Lamb and by steadfast testimony. That hostility becomes even more subtle when chapter 13 introduces 2 terrifying beasts. The first beast rises from the sea, receiving power from the dragon, and the second beast rises from the earth, performing deceptive signs to force everyone to receive the mark of 666. This is not merely a number, but a symbol of distorted imitation as the beast tries to resemble God, while its nature remains violence and deception. The mark on the hand and the forehead is the battle over human loyalty. But the final victory has already been fixed when chapter 14 reveals the Lamb standing on Mount Zion with 144,000 faithful ones, while 3 angels proclaim the fall of Babylon and warn of the consequences of worshiping the beast. 2 harvests, 1 harvest of the earth and 1 grape harvest, are thrown into the winepress of the wrath of God. The mystery here is Babylon, the symbol of every worldly system opposed to God, built on pride, greed, and violence. Before the final wrath is poured out, chapter 15 reveals the victors standing beside the sea of glass, mixed with fire, singing the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb, affirming the great deliverance. 7 angels receive the 7 final bowls of plague. And then terror explodes in chapter 16 when the 7 bowls of wrath are poured out. Malignant sores, water turning to blood, the sun scorching people, and the Euphrates River drying up to gather the kings at Armageddon, the symbol of the final confrontation between rebellious humanity and God. The seduction of the demonic system is exposed when chapter 17 introduces the great prostitute seated on the beast, using luxury and power to intoxicate the world. But that evil will destroy itself when the kings turn against her and destroy her. The fall of Babylon is lamented in chapter 18. Its trading system collapses in only 1 hour because its foundation has rotted with sin. And in the most glorious moment, chapter 19, resounds with the hallelujah of the wedding feast of the Lamb before the rider on the white horse appears, called faithful and true, with a sharp sword to defeat the beast and the false prophet. After that victory, chapter 20 records the time when Satan is bound for 1,000 years, then thrown into the lake of fire after the final rebellion. Finally, the great white throne is opened to judge every work of humanity. Rising above all pain, chapter 21 opens the new heaven and the new earth, where the new Jerusalem descends from heaven, where God wipes away every tear and where death and pain are erased forever. The holy city, shaped like a perfect cube, the dwelling place of God, becomes the new home of His people. And the final chapter, chapter 22, closes with the river of life and the tree of life flowing from the throne of God, restoring the ancient Garden of Eden. With the promise, "I am coming quickly," the history of redemption finds its final destination in eternal presence beside the Creator. Closing the entire journey from the beginning to the final chapter of the New Testament, these pages are not only a prophecy about the future, but also a moral declaration for humanity. These core messages are not distant or abstract. They are a guide for how each person can live in the real world. First, remember this. Believing in God is not about joining a religious organization. It is about finding a Father who understands every pain, every concern, and even every mistake within us. In a world full of uncertainty, where justice is sometimes covered over by fame and profit, faith in God becomes a firm anchor. When you believe that you are loved, you no longer live in insecurity or anxiety about the future. You realize that your life is not an accident, but carries a higher and beautiful purpose. That love becomes the source of energy that helps you stand firm through the storms of everyday life. And true faith must be proven through action. If you believe in the Creator, you cannot remain indifferent toward the world He created. Becoming a good person means being honest in every word, because in a society where truth and falsehood are often mixed together, keeping your promises and living with sincerity have become more precious than ever. Being a kind person begins with living truthfully with yourself and with everyone around you. Do not forget to show patience toward mistakes. Revelation teaches that forgiveness stands at the heart of victory. When you are willing to overlook another person's faults, you do not only help them feel lighter, but also free your own soul from anger and bitterness. A good person is someone who sees the needs of the weak, who extends a helping hand without demanding repayment. Do not wait until you are truly wealthy before doing good. Begin with small things, a smile, a listening ear, or a quiet act of help. Finally, remember, this true faith must be proven through action. If you believe in the Creator, you cannot remain indifferent toward the world He created. Becoming a good person is the most beautiful way to display your faith. Be honest in every word. In a society where truth and falsehood are mixed together, keeping promises and living with sincerity have become more precious than ever. Being a kind person begins with living truthfully with yourself and with everyone around you. Show patience toward mistakes. Revelation teaches that forgiveness stands at the heart of victory. When you are willing to overlook another person's faults, you do not only help them feel lighter, but also free your own soul from anger and bitterness. Share and take responsibility. A good person is someone who sees the needs of the weak, who extends a helping hand without demanding repayment. Do not wait until you are truly wealthy before doing good. Begin with small things, a smile, a listening ear, or a quiet act of help. This life is a short journey, but it is filled with opportunities for us to become the best version of ourselves. When you place your faith in God and decide to live with kindness, you are building your own Jerusalem right where you live. Keep loving, keep forgiving, keep walking in honesty. Because every kind action you plant today is a precious brick in the eternal legacy of your own life. Thank you for walking with me through the full journey of exploring the 66 books of the Holy Bible. I hope the lessons about grace, love, and kindness have touched your heart and become a source of inspiration, helping you live a fuller and more meaningful life each day. If you found this content helpful for your life or would like to share your own perspective, do not hesitate to leave your thoughts. I wish you clarity of mind, a generous heart, and complete joy as you continue walking your own path. Goodbye, and I will see you again in the next topics.